Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast, Master Random the podcast. Before I go into the sponsorship, I'd like to let you know about episode 200, the live show, and it's going to be awesome. And if you are interested in joining us for the live show, hit me up in the DMs on any of the social media platforms, and I will give you details on how you can join us for this live show coming soon in a couple weeks. It seems like, yeah, it's coming really close. So hit me up, super down, if you're super down, and we'll make it happen. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast. If you are listening to this on the Apple Podcast app, your ratings and reviews go much further than you really think. And if you do so, that's super solid. So thank you for that if you do. Now to the sponsorship. This episode is brought to you by Ada's Mortuary. They are a small family-owned and operated mortuary that has been serving this local island community for over 47 years to be exact. They have been providing the top-of-the-line funeral and cremation services during a time when it is absolutely needed the most, because death is never on time. It's always untimely. It always comes unexpectedly, and you want that service to be the best, and the best is with Ada's Mortuary. If you're looking for more information on funeral and cremation services and sea burial services, also pre-need plans. Pre-need plans are plans that prepare you and your family for in the event of your untimely death. It lays the burden off of your family to grieve in the proper way without having to worry about the little burdens that come along with trying to prepare for the memorial of a loved one. So if you're interested in that, contact them at 477-1311 or visit the mortuary at South Route 4 Sinonia. Right after you pass the gas stations in Sinonia, go down the hill to your left-hand side. Boom, right there. You cannot miss it. Ada's Mortuary. They're big enough to serve, yet small enough to care. My next guest on the show is Lenora Makela. She is a registered dietitian nutritionist, and she is one of Guam's first female black belts out of the Figo Bonsai Jiu-Jitsu Academy. And overall, just a super awesome person. She dropped some serious knowledge bombs on the podcast in terms of nutrition and diet and everything revolving around that universe. And also talked about her recent promotion to black belt in jiu-jitsu and her story. Super awesome conversation. I'm not going to hold you back any further from my conversation with Lenora Makela on Master Random the podcast. Check it out. We're good. And we're on. Hey, and we are on. Welcome to the show, Lenora. Or I should say Nora. This is something that I have been looking forward to since I've asked you, but even before then. You've always been on my short list of people to want to get on the show. I think not only your credentials, but everything you've done outside of your professional life is extremely admirable and commendable. So yes, welcome to the show, and we're finally making this happen.
Yeah, Seduce Masi, I'm really, really happy to be here.
Yeah.
Likewise. I mean, I literally have heard of Master Random podcast, I want to say since the beginning, just our friends of friends and our networks intertwining, your phone conversation a minute ago. And then even, I think back in December or something, our mutual friend, Rob LG, was like, Nora, would you be down to do a podcast? Because we work together at Mariana's Physicians Group, MPG, and every now and then, I think we were doing some kind of nutrition activity, and I was just speaking my mind. He's like, dude, you need to get on a podcast.
Or do your own podcast.
You
ever thought of that?
No, because on the list of things that I've got going on,
it's just not feasible to set one up? What if someone set one up for you and then you just came in and kind of spoke your mind for an hour? And
it would probably, I mean, just at first thought, it would just be adding more to my plate, you know, and part of my goal is to work on not over promising and under delivering.
For sure.
And I know I put myself in positions where I'm constantly adding things to my plate. I think through this conversation today, we'll find out just how many things are on that plate.
Just kind of got pushed to the side for the next couple hours.
Until I have enough reasons to want to do one. You know, like that's the type of person that I am. I could say, nah, right now. And if one day I wake up and I've got 3 different reasons that are giving me motive, I'll just be like, yeah, let's do it.
Do you find yourself spreading yourself thin often, or is it you've been going through the motions so much that you've created the right amount of balance for you to move from day to day?
Balance is literally one of the key words that have driven me for over a decade now. So, it's really just that effort to maintain balance, you know, because I've got a career building up. I've got jujitsu that I play a pretty big role in.
For sure.
You know, it's that lifestyle that I've always called it my minor. And it really
minor. Now it's your major.
Yeah, well, kind of they're side by side. There's so much parallels between my work as a registered dietitian and then my place on the mats with BJJ, and they go hand in hand. And then I always also kind of put them in their respective places, especially because now I'm a wife and a mother, and that of course is always a big game changer.
Right.
So even though I constantly am like filling up my calendars and filling up my plates, I always try to make sure that I'm not putting my daughter in the back burner, you know? Right. So like today, it was between a Monday or Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
And when you said it was 6 p.m., I was like, oh man, I could actually make that work after work. But then that would add another day where I'm not with my daughter, or, you know, even when I'm on the mats and I'm coaching, she's kind of in the back. So I was like, nah, this means a lot to me, by the way, you know, when I'm ditching my kids' class.
I know. I was thinking to even my girlfriend Kai, she goes, "You're not going to class today?" I was like, "Oh, no, we're gonna do podcasts."
Yeah, I had to weigh it, you know, to be like, okay, I could just make it fit to where it's not going to disrupt my training this week. But then I was like, my girl's been kind of clingy these past couple weeks, and if she's doing that, her behavior is probably saying something, right? Like she's wanting the attention or whatever phase she's going through. So I was like, no, I'll keep it on one of those days that my husband and I will balance. You know, some days I take her, some days he takes her. So I was like, no, we'll keep it that way. So as far as spreading myself too thin, sometimes I do. Sometimes I do the kind of like book the week so far and then make sure the following weekend I can recover or something like that.
Right. So it's like flat lines, and then then it gets big, and then it flat lines again.
Yeah, and I mean things pop up on the fly too. You know,
for sure.
Oh, we'll do this 5K, and then
especially familial obligations. You live here on Guam, that's like automatic, right?
Definitely, big thing. And coming back home, and then
how long has it been?
I moved back in January 2016 when I was pregnant, but I'd been home after undergrad for about 2 years working, and then I left again for graduate school and to pursue my registration, my license, and then I came home
permanently.
Yes. And speaking of family, I mean, I moved home knowing that I'd made the choice to live with my grandmother because she was living in her big 2-story house by herself. And conversations while I was off island, I kind of knew I was going to come home and be there with her. Maybe not like a direct caretaker, but definitely in the house and living that life. And then I ended up moving home and having Irie. So then there was kind of like I would say I've got 2 nannies in the house. I've got, Nana Biha, who's already acting like a nanny. And then I've got my baby. So that's a lot to juggle.
Right.
And yeah, but you find a way, as long as I consciously make an effort to think, not overlook anything. I just try to balance things that I want to do and figure out how I kind of just have to make sure I spread them out.
Yeah, for sure. Last year I started to overpile my things I was doing. And this is when I started doing, when I first came into the academy, and then I disappeared for 6 months because during that time I figured, I was like, wait, I've added all these things, But the things that I added last year, it didn't really, I didn't take care of them, or I didn't accomplish anything. So I had to spend that last 6 months of last year, like really trying to shed everything that I put on and kind of build it back slowly to know and realize that, yeah, balance is extremely important. And Jason J, I always bring up Jason J because he said it best. And exactly what you said, he's like, I don't find balance. I'm constantly maintaining balance every single day. And so I really took that to heart and put that a part of my credo of how I live my life. And it's helped like tremendously.
That's awesome.
Just to be able to, and now bringing jujitsu back on board and doing more podcasts and stuff like that. It's really helped me to find what I really want in my life, right? And you've realized the other things that were added is like, you don't really need it. It was like you wanted to do it, but you have to you also have to see that when it's not needed, or it's not needed because it's not there, or it's not there because it's not needed, right?
Yeah. We kind of had to do it to figure it out, right? Like, like I'm sure if someone just told you right off the bat, like, oh, don't do that, you've been like, right? And then it's just like,
I only learned the hard way.
There's a little TV show before, and it's like, oh, why do you have to learn it the hard way? It's like, oh, because then I remember it better.
Yeah, and that's actually that plays true really well. That's I wanted to tap into, I noticed when I was reading your master's, what you pursued, what you studied and researched in your master's, I was reading that it was based on child obesity here in Guam. That's something that's really really critical, right? Because we already have a bad nutritional lifestyle as adults. And since I was a kid, I've been eating ramen and Pop-Tarts and Ichiban, and spam tomato sauce and corn, right?
Corned beef fried rice.
Right, corned beef fried rice and corned beef and cabbage, and that was staple, right? And what did you find in your studies and your research while you're going through that program as to what the problem is and is there a solution?
Great question. That's a giant loaded question.
Yeah, we have all night.
Sorry, I could talk. I literally talk about food all day, every day for a living. We could definitely do this, but I'll try to condense it somewhat. So, yes, my master's was with the Children's Living program, Children's Healthy Living program. Oh my gosh, I almost murdered that. So the CHILL program for short. This was like a multi-million-dollar grant that was awarded to UH Manoa. At least the principal investigator was there, Dr. Novotny, and she put together like this giant group of scholars from the U.S. affiliated Pacific. So that was Guam, CNMI, American Samoa, Alaska, Federated States of Micronesia. So our whole region that's not part of the contiguous U.S. but is U.S. basically took a bunch of scholars, researchers, and put together this giant program to study childhood obesity in the remote U.S. Pacific, the minorities within our U.S. population. And my role was a scholarship recipient to pursue my master's. So each jurisdiction was awarded two scholarships, and depending on the region or the island per se, what they needed, they could designate whether that would be a master's, a PhD, an associate's.
Do they determine the focus?
Yes. Okay. Well, the overall focus is childhood obesity prevention. Now, to answer one of your questions about the problem, it's multi-sectoral, to put it shortly. Like, there's just so many factors. And I mean, if you were to look up a socio-ecological model, you could just map out how many factors that is, So when we think about obesity, it starts at an individual level, basically energy in, energy out, right? And we know that individual level, that can be affected by your genetics. It can be affected by your direct lifestyle. And then it starts to, then everything else starts to unfold. I'm sorry. So like your family, education, your environment, whether that's your environment around your home, around your school, around your work. Then there's like policies around each of those places, what's available around each of those places, your commute, you know, whether you're within one village, you're going to another village, and then there's bigger things.
All the way down to your commute?
Yes.
Like the stores you're passing by?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'll get so
okay.
much further into that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Then there's policies around all that, you know, policies at your workplace, policies in the schools, policies in your community. And then there's outlying all of that. Then there's social culture, you know, what's considered normal, what are values, religion, you know, all these different institutions of beliefs, right? So all of these things are going to play a part into shaping and influencing lifestyles and choices.
A single individual.
Yes, okay. And their health status, basically their health and weight status. So as we started, let's just say all of us scholars that were chosen from all of our respective jurisdictions, we, on top of taking whatever courses that were in our degree program, so mine, of course, was nutrition, and I was pursuing a master's. I had Tanisha Affligui, who was pursuing her PhD from Guam. So we suddenly became like instant sisters. Of course, we're Chamorro, we're representing our island, and of course, we're like the only people to relate to at the moment, right?
Right. Immediately,
we actually hit it off so well. It was incredible how much we related to each other, and we had already known each other as acquaintances. As she was already a practicing dietitian, I was up and coming. Like, I wanted to be a dietitian. I was on the road to becoming a dietitian, and I would already seek advice from her time and time again, just as a local. She was at the time the youngest local dietitian. So it was the relationship was already made before you guys. Yes, but
realize you guys are going to be working a lot together.
Yeah, and then because we were chosen together, it's like, yeah, we got this, and our bond became like tenfold stronger. And so when we started, we had to take basically one course together at all times, but we pretty much took most of our courses together. And then the more that we had to read up studies in our respective courses and meet with our respective advisors, you know, they're really good at asking those open-ended questions and finding out what matters to you and what types of things I wanted to know about. And I can't even remember what it was that I was saying I was interested, but somehow it unfolded into the nutrition environment. So for me, somewhere along,
which is so broad,
yes,
yeah, as
huge.
You had mentioned,
it's a big deal. The nutrition environment shapes, you know, what you have access to. I mean, I've grown up in Jotnya, but I've gone to school in Aganya and Tamuning and stuff. So it differs, you know, like I would say things like, and of course the researchers, our advisors are taking our word for it because they're not from Guam. So they're really good at respecting and listening, you know, that active listening to the issues that keep popping up in conversation and what things that I deal with and interested in nutrition. So for me, somehow it gravitated towards the nutrition environment. So that became kind of a focus, and thinking about, you know, if I'm from Jotnya, but other people are shopping in Tamuning, like what are the stores available? What food do I have access to from Jotnya? How far do I have to go?
Buenos Mart, right? 7 day
supermarket.
Matt's a Jotnya resident there.
Yeah, and I mean, at the time when I started, Manila Piles wasn't even up yet. It was coming up, you know, or no, I'm sorry, it was up already, but still relatively new.
Okay.
So, you know, it's like, how far do we have to go to get groceries?
Right.
And then socionomics comes into play because it's like, well, if I don't want to waste gas, then I'm gonna go close by.
Wow.
But if I don't
You're
mind
like blowing my mind right now. Yeah.
If I don't mind blowing a little bit extra gas money, I could go all the way to American Grocery or cost you less if I wanted to. But or do I want to run my map and how I'll wait until I'm gonna be in that area, you know? So
let's wait till traffic dies down.
Exactly. You know, and or when you're already gonna go up for a party or something, you'll go grocery shopping on your way home, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then when you're on your way home, like, I'm too tired, I'm over it.
yeah. Get that one onion tomorrow.
Literally. Guess we're not cooking till later. But man, it's all part of the conversation.
Just eat Eggos when you get home. I don't care if it's dinner.
That's why we got the case of Ichiban.
Yeah.
We're like, cereal will do.
And that is a true story, though. And it's not just for 1 or 2 or 3 different families. It's all families across the island. Yeah.
So that immediately became an interest for me. And then, you know, so we'd start kind of putting together a research question. And for me, I learned, one of the things I had to learn was in research, as much as you want to know all about the world and you want to, you know, solve all the problems and find all the answers, in research, you have to be more and more and more specific. Like, you can take one question that sounds simple, but when you have to figure out what are you going to measure, how are you going to get that data, what kind of IRB are you going to have to get, which is an institutional review board to make sure that it's ethical, that you're not violating people's privacy.
Or is even the data available?
Yes, how are you going to secure it? What kind of cost is it going to take? So when you get to all this, and then it's like, okay, we've got different variables. How are we going to measure it? What kind of statistical tests are you going to do to measure that? And you're like, oh my gosh, you start getting a headache because you're like, this is so much more complicated. But then, so to uncomplicate things, you specify things. You make things more and more specific and more specific. So you figure out that you're just really researching a tiny, tiny, tiny piece of a puzzle. And that answer, the answer to the question may or may not give you a direct answer. And so many different types of studies are going to tell you so many different types of answers. And it's only going to tell you a little bit of pieces of the puzzle. Mm-hmm. And the actual puzzle is just so vast, and it just takes reading 5 ever,
Yeah.
And then you have to take it with a grain of salt, because you'll learn in research that just because one research study said this, man, we got to really look, like, what were they measuring? How did they measure it? What was the bias? Who funded it? Who were they really?
Who funded it?
Yeah,
that's huge. That's critical.
It's giant because
look at sugar,
yes.
right? Sugar was funded by certain people to make it seem like it was better, even trans fat, mm-hmm. right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so like food science, food development, right? I look at it. It can go 2 different ways. When people would be like, oh, anti-GMO and organic this and inorganic that. And man, the conversations can go on forever. But, when it comes to food product development, science can kind of go in 2 different ways. So in one light, food product development was there to help the industry in terms of, like, if bugs are killing our crops, how can we not have our plants keep dying? What can we do to preserve animals? I mean, think of humans, right? We didn't have SARS and like the bird flu and all of this before, but every time there's a new bug, there's something that is threatening the lives of people, we come up with a vaccine. We have to find some way to treat it. So our food is the same way. If there's threats to the food, we have to find a way to preserve our food. And then we have to find a way to help countries and populations of people that aren't getting their nutrients, that aren't getting enough food or enough variety. So like golden rice, they've taken rice like in parts of the world where kids were dying of like vitamin A deficiency, right? So what did they do? They fortified rice because that's an easy staple to feed big populations, right, with vitamin A, turning the rice a yellow tinge. They call it golden rice, and it's literally saved populations of people from dying from a little vitamin deficiency. Mm-hmm. So food product development is intended in one light to do that, to help feed people, help get nutrients to people, help preserve food, right? And then on the other side, the other light, it's just that business side of just
consumerism.
Yeah, like produce more, faster, bigger products. And so there's so much gray area, like they overlap. Consumers can't tell the difference. So there's
like, Matt, this is healthy rice. This is the healthiest rice that you can find in the world.
Yeah. So the conversation just can go on and on about every topic, and then sometimes you're like, you answer so many things, and then all of a sudden you can get confused all over again. Like, wait a minute, hold on.
Did any part of the process cause you to rethink your question again of, is this the right direction? Or did the focus change so much from your original intent that it was the natural evolution, so to speak?
Mm-hmm. Well, as far as like the questions and like the work that I do with nutrition and the research that I've done, not too bad, because it's really just...
It's just like confirm or...
Yeah, well, I mean, the research that I've done for Guam is really just to produce data for Guam. Because when we read textbooks, when we read magazines, and we read like statistic reports, they're of the mainland.
Yeah, U.S. national statistics or reports say that.
Yeah, and a large part of that is because we don't have data to reflect Guam. We don't have people writing about Guam, collecting data. And the big national studies, they don't come to Guam, whether it's like they can't bring the van to the island that's going to be able to take all of the legit data, which is a true story. All we really rely on is like the BRIFIS behavioral risk factor surveillance system, which is a telephone survey. But then we got to think, like, how many people on Guam are answering that phone? Like, oh yeah,
I don't even answer that call from Chicago ever.
So exactly.
They've been trying to get me to do a survey for like months already.
Exactly. So that's like, that paints the picture of the data that we do have for Guam. How representative is it of our island? So part of the mission of this CHILL program was to get people who care about the island, who want to research about their island, to produce data for the island so that we can actually compare, like, how do we do compared to the U.S. mainland, or, you know, what are the issues? Because should we be comparing to the U.S. mainland, or should we be comparing to our immediate outside region? Both.
Okay.
Both, and they do have efforts to do that. I mean, my professors and whatnot from all of the different universities have done a tremendous job. I mean, they just blew my mind while I was doing my master's on just how much work they can do, how their minds think, and how they just really want, like, man, I think one of the things I took away from my master's is just how to push yourself to do more, right? Like, how I think that's part of why I can put more on my plate now is, like, I had an advisor who would work like 3 to 4:30. By 7 a.m. she was pushing out like emails all over the place. She had already worked out in the morning, like done like some marathon run or some workout, came to work before everybody, was in the office at 7. Everyone comes in at 9. So she was like handling her emails. Then she'd like teach her classes. She'd advise people. She'd do 1,000 meetings. And then she would delegate like a boss, you know, like, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like, how does she get so much done? And then go off island, come back, do all this stuff, and still be with it, still be eating well, still be, you know, in great health, good spirits, good positive vibe, and inspiring everybody to be just as productive. And then her boss was just the same, you know? So that kind of really pushed me to be like,
rubbed off on you, definitely.
Definitely. I mean, as much as I hated it at the time.
I mean, listen to our earlier in our conversation, right?
Yeah. And without that role model, you know, and that's huge. That's another thing I took away from my studies was in thinking about preventing childhood obesity. Like one giant takeaway that I took in all of my studies was to prevent childhood obesity, we do need to work on our adult population because of the role modeling factor. Right. I mean, we've got federal funds that go into school lunch programs.
Monkey see, monkey do, monkey eat, monkey.
Literally. And I mean, I like
little monkey eat.
Yeah, I like to say, you know, whenever I get a chance to talk to parents, I'm like, you know, my mom always said, do as I say, not as I do. Mm-hmm. But really think about it. When you're growing up, when you're in your teenage years, your adolescent, every inch of your body is like trying to ignore what they say, you know, whether or not you're trying or not, you are. And then as you get older, you don't forget what your parents do. You know, you remember what types of things they cook on Saturday morning, you know, how they do their dinners. Especially when
you move off to the States and now you're like, me, I replicated everything that my mom made, you know, it's like, oh shit, I want kadu, I want, you know, spare ribs to fowl, you know, and you mimic everything. And so that sort of diet as a child followed me, especially out to where I was going, and whatever ingredients and resources that were around me sort of affected that dish, right? Mm-hmm.
Mm. So that's the role modeling, right?
All right. You are, okay. All right. You got me thinking right now.
I try to tell parents, like, don't use that as your excuse to do what you want. If you want better for your children, it has to start with you. What Gandhi says, you know, like, be the change that you seek. Mm-hmm. So it does start with the individual. And so same thing in nutrition. I can't change people, but I can work on myself and I can role model these behaviors and I can try to spread that same, you know, of course it starts with education, but then you learn, you don't necessarily practice. And I fully believe that nutrition is just a set of skills to build. It's just skill building. Think about what you just said. You built skills because you wanted to. When you were ready to start cooking meals because you're away from home and you really missed the culture of food, you made a point to grab every resource that you had to make it, right? So skill building, if you didn't have those if you didn't know what resources you had, you would just been like,
how much salt, Mom? How much salt?
Exactly.
3 tablespoons? All right, 3.
Yeah. No, it's
totally against the nutritional stuff.
You know when you know. You just know.
Right. Just to taste, huh? What does that mean?
You know. I always joke with and same with me, you know, as much as I knew I wanted to be a dietitian, when it came to cultural foods, my thing was learn to cook it how you know that flavor, you know that taste. Learn it the same way that your parents cooked it, that your grandparents, make it mungy, you know?
Right.
And then after I figured that out, then I can start to tweak it how I want to make it. But just to learn the original first,
right?
Not to just start with like the experimental whatever, you know, because you don't even know what you're going for. But
try my experimental stafal right here. Eggplant stafal.
No, I think one time I tried to do tofu pork and beans.
You need the bacon.
I was like, nah.
The bacon is critical. Matt will tell you the bacon.
Spam and pork and beans, hot dog and pork and beans. I tried to do tofu and pork and beans. I was better off just doing pork and beans alone. Like, wasn't quite worth the challenge for me at the time. Maybe if I gave it another dab at it, but your palate grows too. I mean, the more you learn. I always say it's the more you learn. Education is one, exposures is a whole nother thing. So it's beautiful that everything that I've learned to teach for children, you know, for the things that we teach nutrition for children, for toddlers, for growing children, a lot of those can apply to adults because of where we're at, right? Like what you said about this is what we know is limited as far as nutrition goes, right? What we've grown up with.
Right.
So if we didn't get multiple exposures to all these different vegetables, all these different types of food because we were stuck on rice and meat.
Right. I call it the war ration diet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's fluid. I mean, nutrition transition, this is a very loaded word, very loaded keyword if you want to research it. The nutrition transition of Guam, of our Pacific region has really evolved. So on top of my thesis, which I think you looked up a little bit, I also had a giant project that a bunch of professors thought was my dissertation for a PhD, and it wasn't. It was my baby, my project that my advisor gave me.
Now you got a back pocket thing for your PhD.
Yeah, no, I if I made the argument and I wanted to stay back another year or two, I probably could have done it, but I did not. I wanted to be a registered dietitian, and I needed to come home, and I was sold on that. So It was called the Pacific Food Guide. And the purpose of this project was to be used in the intro nutrition course that we were trying to create into an online course so that a lot of our other regions, Federated States of Micronesia, CNMI, all these different regions could access these courses online, you know, and basically become educated.
Readily available information about nutrition.
And then it was a supplemental textbook.
Right.
Because our textbook is based on the mainland, right?
Right.
What we learn is all based on the mainland foods, mainland system, right? USDA, we've got My Plate, all our guidance systems is all mainland based.
Yeah.
But we live in the Pacific Ocean, and you're not going to find breadfruit in there, and you're not going to read about coconut milk in there.
Or fish.
Yeah. So the purpose of my baby project that was voluntold to me was to marry our foods. And there's another guidance system in the Pacific called the Secretariat of Pacific Community, SPC. So that's like all our non-U.S. neighbors that they have their own system that incorporates breadfruit and fish and all these.
So that would be like Indonesia or Philippines?
All of them.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have kind of a collective other kind of dietary guidance system for health. And it's for short SPC. And so the purpose of the project was to marry the two guidance systems and create kind of a reference of food for students.
Okay.
And to make it in terms that we could better relate with. So instead of like protein and grains and fruits and vegetables, it was like foods grown from the ground, chosen from the sea, and
picked from the tree?
No, walks on the ground.
Okay.
Right. So basically animals on land, everything in the ocean, and then everything growing on the land. So that was like the chapters.
Okay.
And then I had to find all the traditional foods in our Pacific region. holy moly. And so we're like, oh yeah, in Guam we got, so I'm from the South, right? I'm from Jotnia. I've got family in Santa Rita. And I've spent a lot of my time between Santa Rita, Jotnia, and Sinahanya growing up. And so, yeah, we've got plenty of trees and ranches and mangoes and eggplant and tomatoes and a lot of different stuff, right? And then when you start to think, okay, I got to just get all these different resources and ask everybody from the different islands that I've never heard of, I've never met before. Hey, can you give me a list of all your local foods that you have grown and everything you have in the ocean while you're at it? And hey, do you have the cultural names while you're at it too? Because I had to find all the local names for everything, for all, like for Papua New Guinea and Kosrae and how do they say banana? How do they say coconut? How many different names there are for coconut? Holy moly. Maybe that's something that we want to look up.
Sure.
Is, the Pacific Food Guide. Google that. And this was I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Of course, you just say yes.
This is published?
Yeah.
No way.
It's online.
Okay.
So it's free access. Basically, it was supposed to be
How come I've never heard of this?
I don't know. It's under my maiden name. I don't know what name you're looking up. Lenora Makela was the one that one. So I learned how to make a book. I learned Adobe InDesign on the spot. I was doing tutorials after tutorials to look this up.
University of YouTube.
Literally, man. But I learned so much. Even for my thesis, ArcGIS and like Google Earth and all these different. It's amazing how many things when your professor just says, figure it out and let me know what you find in a week.
Yeah.
And then meet in a week and you're like, hey, figure this out. Maybe you need help. Let me get you a researcher over here, another master's student that's doing some ArcGIS research and mapping and things that I've never heard of. You guys should meet and talk and figure out how you're going to do this data. I'm like, okay.
So how many data points did you complete it with?
It's popping up behind me. I'm happy to say I took all these pictures. Ooh, it's a weird format. Is that the right PDF? Is that a PDF? That's on EDU. Look it up on Google. So it should just be a PDF down. That one.
Oh.
So it should pop up kind of like a PDF book. And a lot of textbooks are. Nope, that one's. Oh, yeah, go down. That's this is the publication. Oh, I'm published. But, okay, try again. Go back. So.
Well, I like how you threw that had the whole United States.
Yeah, on top of the Pacific.
The Pacific.
Semantic scholar. Oh man, how is this not? Maybe take out just put Pacific Food Guide. Interesting. I don't know why. Did they take it off without telling me?
Maybe that first one?
No, we tried that.
No.
Oh, okay.
I want to show you how many different names there are for banana and coconut and parrotfish. Maybe try that semantic scholar. I don't think we tried that yet. Aw, boo.
Maybe view PDF?
Okay, try.
Right there?
No, that's the publication. So
it's the publication.
my advisor wrote a manuscript after it, and then it got published in Nutrition Today, which is a pretty badass nutrition magazine. I was pretty proud of that.
Right.
Kind of mainstream for dietitian nerds.
Right.
Anyhow, where was I going with this? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's a chapter in it of nutrition transition.
Okay.
Because I had to define, if I'm going to define what local food...
Sorry, Matt, just go back to that one that showed that map of the United States over
The first
Guam.
one.
Yeah.
So if I had to figure out, if I was going to define what's traditional on Guam, how far do I have to go back for that?
Right.
Because avocado, some of the things that we think is traditional today really isn't Chamorro traditional. Like it came from our Spanish colonial...
Right, whatever they brought on the way from the Philippines, right?
Even and then it got dicey because some of the things that are cultural are also, some people take offense to it. For instance, I had to put fruit bat in there. I had to put dog in there.
Even though we don't consume any of those today.
Yeah, because I had to define what's considered traditional. Because Alaska, they had like crocodile or something, and and a couple other interesting animals. But I had a dense 2-page
Yeah, just keep searching through it, dude, until we find something.
paper on there to define like how our nutrition has evolved. You know, from pre-colonial, like I had an argument with this, with one of the colleagues, the staff, about how rice is indigenous to Guam, because in fact it is, right? If pre-colonial Guam, we had rice paddies.
Okay.
Nowhere else in the Pacific was rice indigenous. And so I was working on this book, and
So indigenous doesn't necessarily mean native to the place prior to...
indigenous does. Indigenous is pre-colonial, but some things that are indigenous,
Like they could have brought rice with them, right?
we had rice paddy. We had rice paddies pre-Spanish era on Guam. So there's research and data to show that. But some things that were indigenous are not necessarily eaten today.
Okay.
Kind of like the language. How if we go pre-colonial Chamorro, it's not necessarily used in how we speak Chamorro today, but now we have a lot of Spanish influence, so that's part. So it had to be all inclusive of pre-colonial, post-Spanish, post all the seafarers, American, and to what is outside.
Okay.
And then we had to find all the cultural names and whatnot. So in thinking about that conversation, really it's like what you said, like World War II. We didn't have Spam before World War II. We didn't have any of these canned goods, right? It didn't exist. But after World War II, because it was shelf stable, because it was, I guess, easier to afford, or I don't know, it could feed a family, right? Like one pot of rice and a can of Spam kind of thing, it became part of our culture. So our culture evolved to where now we identify with these foods.
Yeah.
But 2 generations ago, it wasn't even in the diet, right? And hundreds of years before that, we didn't have a lot of foods because it wasn't on the island, right? We just had like crustaceans and fruit bat and plants.
And Philippine deer that they brought over.
Yeah,
right?
they brought, that was later. They brought dogs, they brought deer, they brought cows, and that was later. So then it became part of the diet. Then the canned goods became part of the diet. So wherever we are today is a result of all of that. But there's nothing to say that we can't continue to evolve. Like that's the thing about a nutrition transition. I mean, 10 years ago, we didn't have all the restaurants that we had today.
Right.
We had like maybe like one Thai, you know, 1 or 2. I mean, we've always had kind of Japanese food, but we have way more. The diaspora of cultures is so much more evident now than it was even 5 to 10 years ago. So if we think positively, right, who's to say that our culture can't continue to evolve with the knowledge, with the research, and even with the more resources? I mean, we're getting new things in our stores all the time. Kale, quinoa, like nobody knew what these were, like unless you were coming from the, you know, going to school in California and Hawaii, and like
unless you're going to a Trader Joe's.
Yeah, exactly, right? Or you're eating out and trying new things, but it's that those exposures, right? If it's cool, then we'll try it. Otherwise, if you're not familiar with it, then as adults we need multiple exposures.
Right.
Which means,
So does evolution mean adding to the diet or subtracting from the diet?
a little bit of both.
Okay.
So it's finding that balance.
Okay.
Right? We got to find the balance with the flavors that we love, the textures that we love, and then bring in a lot of the nutrients so that it is more balanced, because we just have so much more food. Like maybe 1 generation ago, the rice and meat diet was not too bad because they weren't eating it for decades yet.
Yeah.
And also because maybe they weren't in as much sedentary jobs yet. And now some decades later, it's like, yeah, it's kind of catching up to everybody.
Right.
But everything in nutrition is about mindset. You know, you can look at anything from a negative mindset, from a neutral mindset, or a positive mindset. So, I mean, negatively, you can blame everything. We can blame our culture. We can blame our stores. We can blame the price of food. You know, healthy food, quote unquote, healthy food is expensive. From a neutral,
local food can get expensive too.
Right? And then, so that's neutral. Neutrally, it's not good nor bad. Local food is expensive. Everything is expensive. I mean, my subscriptions are expensive. My phone gas is expensive.
My Netflix.
Literally, right? If you're like my household, or it's like, okay, I'll pay for the Netflix. Dad, you pay for the Hulu.
But we're only up to 5 devices.
Yes,
okay?
exactly, right? I mean,
so don't be giving your password to your friend, huh?
We're technically in the same region, same block, you know. Can't be too bad. But neutrally, right? There's so much medications, like 5 times, 10 times more expensive. I was buying my grandma's medications for the past 3 years, and man,
for sure,
if it weren't for her Medicare,
yeah,
really hurting.
Yeah.
So that's neutrally, right? But positively, that's where that growth mindset, which applies to anything, right? If we have that growth mindset, anything can be accomplished. Because I mean, fruits and vegetables go on sale, right? We've got different options: fresh, frozen, canned. We can talk all the politics, but there's still options. Like, oh, because I don't want frozen or canned because of whatever they think is in it, so I'm just gonna stick to the Spam and corned beef.
Right. Is there a real difference
between fresh
and frozen and
That's a great question.
I would imagine canned would be more preservative to keep it fresh in the can on the shelf, and then for frozen, I would think it's just frozen fruit. Right.
Correct for frozen. So if it's, unless they put something in it, sometimes the veggies are sauced or something. But if the ingredient is just the fruit, it's just a play on the temperature. And a lot of times, because they're harvested and then they're frozen right away, we actually get a little bit more vitamin and mineral content if we compare it to non-local produce that's traveled from, like I always like to talk about strawberries. My baby loves strawberries. Strawberries don't grow in Guam. So they're either come from California or anywhere in the mainland. If they were to come from Florida, how long did it take to get from Florida to California to get on something, to get to the island, to get to Payless, to get to your house before you eat it, right? So that whole time you're losing a little bit of vitamin and mineral content, a little bit. But frozen, they picked it, they froze it, shipped it, then it's up to you. I mean, we can lose, depending on how we defrost it, how we cook it, we can lose some stuff there. But
and I think for oranges, they flash freeze oranges in the containers as they're putting it in. I think they leave it on the tree. Do they? I don't know if they leave it on the tree, but I know they flash freeze oranges to keep its sort of nutritional value as it travels across the country from Florida, I would assume, right? Florida orange.
Yeah, right? We need to read the fine print.
I'm more of a concentrate orange juice kind of kid.
Well, so wait, then the canned stuff, right? It's always good to ask, what is it? Like, so they consider canned kind of processed, right? Or if you watch enough documentaries, right, everything's kind of processed. But this word's really been beat up too much. And you have to ask yourself, what about the process or something is making it quote unquote bad? Because the word processed, if I were to go outside and pick the mango and peel it, I processed it. I put it in my blender, I super processed it. It's a process, right? But if you think about all these packaged foods, these canned foods, you have to ask yourself, what about the process is what gave it the bad name? So for canned fruits and vegetables, it's usually added sugar, added salt, added fat for, any of those. But like I said, the food industry, they're not all out to like just make money and kill people. They know this. So now you can find fruits and vegetables that are canned with no salt added, no sugar added. So the fruits will be in like 100% fruit juice, as opposed to syrup. Vegetables will have no salt added, maybe just a little bit of citric acid to keep it in the can. So then it's just sitting in water and vitamin C. Like, what's so bad about that? If it's dented, okay, yeah, we can get contaminated from the can or whatnot. But when you dissect these issues and you realize, man, if that's on sale, I can bring it to a barbecue and it's not going to go bad, kind of thing compared to the frozen. So again, it's those options. Like, that's that positive growth mindset. Like, asking yourself, what about it is terrible? Because then if we figure out what were the preservatives, what were the, what about margarine versus butter? Like, what is it? Then you can make mindful decisions and be like that informed consumer. But then if we just overthink things and start thinking I can't eat anything, like, it goes back to being kind of negative. Like, come on.
Right.
Eat something.
Yeah.
Do the best that you can do.
I'm just going to go back to my itchy band. I can't define process for the life of me.
Man, when I was pregnant, I suddenly wanted everything I ate as a kid, which was itchy band, Chef Boyardee, pickled everything. that was about it. Like I didn't like my breakfast cereals. I didn't like my oatmeals. I didn't. So I would.
You weren't into the nutritional stuff anymore?
No, I was,
but
just not maybe for breakfast. Like, so what did I do? I like bought like the healthy choice soups, or I'd make my husband go and compare the sodium on all the Ichiban and ramens and buy the one with the lowest one, and then throw in some eggs for protein, throw in some vegetables for balance, and man, I'd still enjoy the hell out of it.
Right. Before we get too far away from the purpose of the Pacific Food Guide.
Yeah.
What was the overall encompassing end game for it? Was it mainly to provide the data for everybody who is in the Pacific region to be able to evaluate nutrition better?
Yeah, well, it is the target audience was students.
Okay.
So students who take an intro nutrition undergrad course online from anywhere in the Pacific who had maybe a mainland textbook, but then to be able to overlap or like relate our foods, how does that relate to the food groups? How do I figure out what food this is if I only know it in Chamorro, or I only know it in another language, right? From Palau or something. Then we can find that food like, oh, you meant papaya, or something, like you meant sedzun. Like, what is sedzun? Like we could look up sedzun, you can find that. And I used it a little bit in outpatient clinic when I'd have moms from the outer islands, and like they're writing on their food logs. Like they're like, I don't know the name of it. I'm like, say it in your language. And I'd like pop up this resource, and I'd like control find out how many ways can I search this, like try to spell it, and it would find it.
So it's basically a resource.
Yes, very much. Kind of like that supplemental textbook.
Right. Is it meant to be applicable to, I guess, dietitians or nutritionists who are, what am I trying to get at? Trying to find a background in doing nutritional work here in Guam or around the island?
Yes, in a sense of just identifying what foods people are trying to talk about.
Okay. I see. Understood.
And then maybe helping people understand, like, this comes from this food group. Maybe if you have fish and you have breadfruit, like, can we bring another vegetable? Can we bring in kangkung or bok choy, or some kind of balance? So it brings pictures and it brings words in different languages together.
Yeah.
And then tries to teach students like the difference between our U.S. guidance systems versus our Pacific guidance system. So really more from an academic standpoint.
Right. And I would imagine that the introduction of canned or quote unquote processed food or canned foods has changed the gut makeup, the biota
our microbiota.
Gut. Yeah, right. And how now we process foods. Maybe for the first time they introduced Spam to the population. It was like diarrhea. Everyone had diarrhea for like months, right? Or maybe years.
Everyone was like starting to swell up. Like, what's this?
Yeah. What is this? Oh, that's gout. Yeah. All right. It only hurts when I eat this? Yeah. All right, okay. We'll deal.
But my beer's okay, right? can't be the best of. It's not. Because I drank it this day and I didn't get it. And then the other day I drank it and I ate the shrimp and then I got gout. So it can't be both. It's just the shrimp.
It's just the shrimp. Maybe I'll stop eating garlic flavored shrimp. Yeah. So what happens then if we're trying to evolve the? Is it right to say nutrition of the island or the general?
Our general diet patterns. Dietary patterns.
Yeah. If we want it to evolve, like you said it's to add and subtract, but what are the potential dangers of adding too much? Right. That our guts aren't prepared for, right?
Well, if we're adding nutrients,
it's already diverse too, right? Mm-hmm. Because we can go out to eat. We can eat Chinese food, Korean food,
mm-hmm.
Japanese food, American food,
mm-hmm.
and so we've been.
It would be
already
more
adding.
healing the gut as opposed to beating it up some more.
I see.
But anything extreme, So in teaching and learning nutrition, we've really been talking about balance. But there's 3 other principles that deserve that are just as important. So really, nutrition, our diet is and to clarify diet, right? People are always like, I'm on a diet. I'm on it. I was like, man, can we please Google diet? Because it's just a pattern of eating. Everybody is on a diet. Everybody has a diet.
Yeah.
So it's
I'm on that McDonald's diet.
Yeah, believe it or not, I did a McDonald's diet for 2 weeks as a senior in high school. Really? Not by choice. I'll blame it on my mother. But I lost weight on my breakfast, lunch, and dinner McDonald's diet.
If I'm not mistaken, there was a guy for a month. There was a guy who did this Super Size Me, and then there was a person who did, I think it was like a YouTube thing. He did a diet where he calorie counted what he was eating at McDonald's. Ooh. And he sort of, he was, I guess, aiming for macros, right? So he'll hit this certain amount of calories per day. And yeah, he ended up losing weight off the McDonald's diet, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily good for you if you're listening intently to this conversation.
Like, listen to what the dietitian's telling you. And it's amazing, right? People can listen to this whole thing and they're going to end and be like, that dietitian, she said to eat McDonald's diet. Like, that's all they're going to remember.
She did it for 2 weeks.
That's all that they're going to remember. That's all they're going to take from it. But no, I was in New York for a Global Youth Leadership Conference as a senior. And this was my one chance to go to, it was a big opportunity at the time. And so my parents took it as an opportunity to travel as well, because they'd never been to Maryland and New York. So they went, and after the conference was over, they stayed back another 2 weeks. So it was kind of like a family vacation for 2 weeks in New York. But my mom is a super, super, super tsatsa eater. Like, as like super excited and adventurous I am about food, she's the exact opposite.
Right.
She needs consistency and safety, comfort of mind. So that literally
the same menu option every restaurant.
And it needs to taste the same every time. Wow. Like, she doesn't like it to change.
I know people like that too. I think those closest to me.
Yeah. So as a minor, for 2 weeks, my mom in New York, in Times Square, we literally ate McDonald's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 2 weeks.
Oh my goodness.
So and I already knew I wanted to be a dietitian, kind of a health nut. So instead of like eating 6 times a day and having all kinds of different foods, I learned that if you flip the McDonald's the tray,
paper,
you flip it over. It was a giant nutrition facts table at the time. So I was like, oh my God, I could use this. So I would only eat like a handful of things on the menu for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But we walked everywhere.
Right.
Like all day, everywhere. So
sure.
Even if I had the occasional Starbucks and Godiva, like I came home and people were like, Nora, how did you lose all that weight? I was like, like I was telling the truth, right? But of course, there's other factors. But what I'm just gonna go back to what I said about the other 3 principles that are very important. So we've been talking about balance, right? Balance your food groups, balance your diet with your activity levels, with your sleep, with your relationships. All these different things are so important. And then variety. You need a variety within every food group. So people who if you're so stuck on calorie counting and those macros, right? That's just counting carbs, protein, and fat. That says nothing about vitamins and mineral variety or different colors of fruits and vegetables, because they're all going to have really unique nutrients. Every time people ask me what's the best, what's the superest of super fruits, what's the best this and that, I'm like, all of them, because you need the variety. It's what keeps you not bored. Right. Of your diet. Like if you go on a strict diet, whatever is on that diet plan, you might end up hating those foods for a while.
Right.
Because that's
dragon fruit's good until you eat it every day for 30 days.
Yeah, then you might hate it. Like, don't give me any thing that rhymes with schmack and schmoot. So variety, that's how important it is. And then moderation. So at the extremes, anything in extremes is not going to be too much of a good thing. So moderate all of that. All the things that we think is not so good, moderate them, whether that's sugar, salt, saturated fat, alcohol, sedentary, anything. And then the last one's adequacy. Like, be adequate. It's not just enough to, drink 1 cup of water and eat a broccoli and be like, I'm healthy. Like, you need adequacy.
What? Why do I have diabetes? I've been drinking 1 cup of water.
Right?
And one head of broccoli.
I've been doing the celery juice.
Well, I only drink half and then I'm not sure where the other half goes.
Yeah. A newer quote I just stumbled upon was like, some things you just have to do every day. You know, you can't just eat 10 apples on a Sunday and think that it's going to get the job done. You know, like just kind of need to...
It made up for the rest of the days I didn't eat an apple, right?
So, I mean, those 4 words, right? Balance, variety, moderation, adequacy. Those can answer so many things. So much of the confusion that we get in media about nutrition, like it's when you take things with a grain of salt, like compare it. Like, how is that going to bring me balance? Is that going to give me variety? Is it something telling me I need to moderate something? And is it going to help me be more adequate? So going back to your mindset, right? If you watch a documentary, if you hear about some study or whatever, if it motivates you positively to do any of those 4 things, do it.
Why not?
Yeah. But if it goes against those 4 principles, if it makes you scared to eat, if it makes you think that everything in the world is bad for like everything, you know, like something's wrong with this cup, what was it made, you know, like if it...
I can't drink out of ceramic. I'm so sorry. metal cups only. If
it's making you so fearful, then take that with a grain of salt. Like it's probably not going to be such a good thing for you. And that's going to be so different for different people.
Right. And so I guess that'll lead me to the types of diets, right? People would choose, paleo's the best. Oh, vegan's the best. Vegetarian, pescatarian. So it's all a matter of down to the individual when you really boil it down.
Yeah.
Is this supplemental to your lifestyle and does it make you happy more than I gotta do this because I'm trying to get that summer bod, right? Or I need to fit in that wedding dress come May, right? Yeah.
You got to think of the motive.
Or suit, sorry. Or suit.
Or suit.
Sorry.
Or your goals. I mean,
right.
and it goes back to your goals. Like, what is it that you really want? And how is that building your relationship with food? So my work as a dietitian really builds around that question. Like, what is your relationship with food?
And not any one particular diet. Like, if you want to go into that,
you
sort of like kind of guide people to be like, okay, if you want to go into this, then these are the things you need to be aware of, or?
Oh, that's a good question. So it has to start with the individual, based on what they want, what they're doing. Some people are already set. I mean, they can walk into a door or a conversation with me and they already know, like, they're vegan. They want this, and that. So am I going to spend an hour trying to change their mind and go against what they already know? And it's kind of a waste of my time. Or can I work around what they really want? If there's dangers that I can see, or, that I can see, then it's really bringing to light, like, well, okay, I see this is your belief system, or this is what you believe in, but how is that working out for you? If you've got, what are you coming to me for? Something is not working. So let's figure out what that is. So if it's just helping them find that balance within their own choices, or, if someone's asking me what diet, if they're coming in on a blank slate and they go from not caring to, I want the strictest thing in the world, then that's where I'm like, go back to basics, right? It's just like the world of jiu-jitsu. I tell white belts, gotta learn white belt moves. You really need to build a foundation. As with anything, any sport, any set of skills, you have to build on the foundation. And the foundation is just food groups, nutrients, getting everything that you need. And then if you got that and now you're trying different things, like, okay, we can have that conversation. But if you go from not caring at all, like, oh, I skip breakfast, I just eat this and that and whatever, and then now you want to go super extreme, that's like me showing the super, super fancy advanced move to someone
to me. Yeah. Right.
So I'm like, huh? Neither here nor there, and like Coach Lewis will always say, like, I can show you those moves, but in any role, like any skilled person is going to be able to expose those gaps. Like, oh, you have berimbolo, but you can't shrimp, kind of thing. Let's go back to the basics class. So nutrition's
get back in the line and do drills, right?
Literally. Yeah. Nutrition's the same way of skill building. If you've been drilling and you've been trying things out and building your skills, you cook this, you prep that, or you find balance in your choices, and now you're trying to fine tune things, we can definitely have that conversation. But if you're nowhere near that, like, let's come back to food groups. You'd be amazed how many adults get confused with food groups, like real.
Because we're already on that the U.S. mainland food group kind of.
No, even at
idea?
that. No, like fruits, vegetables. Greens,
Oh, they just don't know it.
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Like
like what's a carb?
Yeah, nutrients and food groups.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nutrients and I can find carbohydrates in almost any food group. When I ask, like, you know, what was your protein this morning,
Okay.
or what was your?
Yeah. Is there a general consensus of what the food groups are here for Guam? Because you mentioned that, you know, in comparing the United States to Pacific Islanders, they're not one and the same. So, did the nutritionists and dietitians have to come to like a general consensus, like, okay, this is something, if we want this plan, if there's a plan to move forward to evolve the diet or the dietary patterns of people here on Guam, but not only on Guam, but in the Pacific region, is there something that has been agreed upon?
Yeah. So that Pacific Food Guide did a little bit of that.
Okay.
And sometimes it depends. Like when we talk about bananas and coconut, it's going to be different. Sweet banana versus a plantain, you know, the cooking banana, young coconut versus like the mana versus like older mature coconut. So their nutrient properties kind of change where they kind of fit. And yes, so, you know, we understand that there's some vegetables that are more starchy that act really like grains. And then we can add local starches like breadfruit, like taro, like cooking banana to those starches. And we can treat it like grains because they're starchy compared to like more leafy greens. Proteins are proteins, whether they're plant-based or animal-based. And there's some overlap. So there's some things that can fit into like beans, mungo beans, since we're thinking local, right?
Right.
It can be considered a plant protein because it does give plant protein. It can be considered a starch, which bleeds a little bit into the grains just because it is starchy.
Okay.
It could be considered a vegetable because of the fiber content and the nutrient profile of mungo beans. And that's okay.
Right.
That can bleed into all of that. What does that say? Eat some mungo beans.
Right. Right.
So the moral of the story is really that then it goes back to the principle of variety. Like if you're just not limiting yourself to just rice and meat, and you're treating foods like, oh, that's got to have good nutrients. If it fits into 3 different food groups, like, man, I should probably be eating it. Yeah, eat it. If it means, man, I should be eating more colors of different ones, and maybe not limiting myself to just broccoli and celery and kale. Like, eat other things. Eat what's outside. Eat what's on sale. Eat what's on sale.
Nora, but I'm still hungry after.
I'd be like, great, we'll get a snack in a little bit. That's okay. But that's actually, you know, I get more complaints about not people feeling more uncomfortable to eat like more types of food and more often than to not eat. I think when I work with people, they get surprised. People think, and I love to ask this to groups and to students, whether they're like high school, middle school, or even adults, like when we define nutrition, like what does nutrition mean to you? When a dietitian walks into the room, people think it's the food police. I call it the confessional.
The expose.
Yeah, because it's really, nutrition can be considered like religion. And I remember writing that on Post-its on my walls at one point when I was in my master's, you know, because you just go off and have like a vision board or your thoughts and whatever, and be like, nutrition is like religion because, man, it really touches on people's belief systems based on their beliefs, how they feel
what do
about
you value. Yeah.
And you can offend people, right? And then like my confessional, right? So people come in and first they can put up a front or they can laugh about their food because they're embarrassed, you know, when I ask them, you know, about how they eat and what they eat. And then if I ask enough questions, people break down in tears because really the issues really unravel, you know, about
I eat because I'm unhappy.
Yeah, literally.
And I'm unhappy because I eat.
Or it can get crazy. Issues can get really deep, you know, as far as it even goes into like who prepares the food and if I want to eat healthy food, but then other people eat it, or, you know, like the family dynamics or or I want to buy this, but then they spend the money on that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or I want this, but I can't because they're in a bad place, emotionally. And those are all big issues. So,
Right.
so psychologically, the food relationships are huge. That's why that's my focus in just building healthy relationships with food. To not think that it has to be perfect. Like, we're all on different skill levels. And I learned that from one of my mentor chefs, was that we're all on different skill levels. And if I make something look easy, it's because I've been doing it for him, he would say like 40 years. But for me, I'll say, okay, maybe a decade. I could actually say that, right? Like, I might make this sound easy and look easy, but because I've been practicing it for 10 years, like, you're on a different skill level. Maybe you cook, maybe you don't. Maybe you never cared about food groups or whatever, and now it's overwhelming. Maybe you've tried things, or maybe you're too hard on yourself. Maybe you need to let up a little bit. So wherever you're at, like, let's make some progress. And that's where that conversation would take off from there.
I see. How would you now, not you yourself, but I guess the community that's here on Guam, how do you implement it to the general population now, right? Because now there's a plan, there's an idea, but to actually get people to eat this way or evolve the gut biome of people who live here, whether you're Chamorro, Japanese, Korean, now we're all part of this melting pot in which the foods that we make affects each and every one of ours. I mean, maybe more culturally sensitive people, they would only eat Korean food or only eat Japanese food, right? But for the most part, all of us eat all different kinds of food. So how do you get past that barrier, or how would, and I don't want you to, think I'm trying to let you speak for the entire community itself, but, I guess from your perspective, how do you think would be the best way to approach getting people to be more aware of their nutrition?
Well, just like the problem, it has to be multi-sectoral. So we're not going to hit it at any one of those influential places. It has to come from working at the environment, making the healthy choice the easy choice, whether it's, something as simple as taking down a bunch of the beer posters at the grocery stores, because out of sight, out of mind, right? So if you go in and all you see is sugar sweetened beverage, this is on sale, and beer's on sale, and everything's sponsored by beer, and that's on sale, and then out of sight, out of mind, you don't care. But what if we started to make the gaps, right? Basically, fruits and vegetables are easy to target because everybody could benefit from more fruit and vegetable intake. So how would we make that cool? Like, does it take murals? Does it take, and then we think about marketing, right? How do we market? How do the big companies market Pepsi and Apple and all of that? So taking a spin off of that, like, how can we make it attractive, make it something that you repeatedly see in our environments, whether it's multiple touches, like you have it on a poster, you hear about it on the radio, and then you see it at checkout, kind
literally
of
flooding your feed or your environment with.
So then there's education, of course. People just need to know, but if people don't want to know, then they might not really get to know things.
And we would think it would be as simple as just making kids eat better at school, right? But it's not that simple.
No, because kids can starve until they get home and they have it their way. I knew of friends and family who would like eat nothing all day. They'll maybe have like a bag of chips and an iced tea, and then just wait till after school, and they can either go to mom and pop store, go to a fast food restaurant, or just go home and eat kadu. It's waiting.
Or Hot Pocket.
Yeah.
2 minutes.
Bagel bites and Ichiban, all that. So then that's where the role modeling goes. That's kind of where I decided that's where I made the commitment to stay in outpatient care for my master's, is this idea. And
what does that mean exactly?
So when people think of dietitians, the first place they think is clinical, like in a hospital. Yeah. And I love clinical dietetics in the hospital, because when people really push comes to shove, and like tube feeding and feeding through IV lines and stuff, like when doctors are asking for your advice, man, that feels really good. Like doc's like, consult a dietitian, like what do we feed them? They could feed them, but
hey guys, you enjoying this conversation with Nora? If you are, go and rate and review the podcast on the Apple Podcast app if you're listening to it there, and that'll be super awesome. Back to the show.
Man, they really, doctors who appreciate the dietitian input, man, that interdisciplinary team is so key. Like it works well. Like you don't have to think about it. I'll think about it. You focus on everything else. I'll read everything you're doing and I'll give you the recommendation. Like that's cool. But then the greater majority is like just helping people tolerate their food and get them in and out of the hospital, and maybe giving them a 5-minute lecture on how they should eat when they get out, right?
Right.
That part to me is not as meaningful. Everyone's got like half foot out the door, like, yeah, eat my
Where's those barbecue chips?
I've literally at GMH I'll never forget, I've had like patients, like older trauma patients, they crack me up because, you know, they'll have their family bring in the food that they want. And then I've had like I've seen old ladies, like when they see me coming, they're like stashing the taquitos and stuff away. They're like, yes. And they're like, okay, you know, and I'm just like, can you chew your food? Can you swallow your food? So, you know, we're giving this
but
diet,
I got this taquitos in my throat. Can you
So doctors want to know why your blood glucose is at like 200, because we're only giving you brown rice and, you know, whatever. But, and you know the answers, right? So that having that conversation is not as meaningful to me. The impact, once they're out of the hospital, they may or may not follow it.
That interpersonal relationship goes away.
Yeah. Okay. And more so when people leave, sometimes they'd call the hospital like, man, is there a dietitian that we can follow up with? And when I was there, we'd be like, oh, sorry, there's none, you know?
Yeah.
So to have these longer conversations, it means in an outpatient setting. And for me, thinking about childhood obesity, thinking about role modeling, thinking of the things that I focused my studies on, I really wanted to be in a place where it's like, you know what, if I'm going to give you my heart and my soul and my knowledge thus far, I'd like for you to walk through my door, not me to walk into your room door, because I could walk into any door. It doesn't mean they want to listen.
Right.
But if you walk into my door, you've already made a step towards wanting to care to hear what I have to say. You know, even if a doctor told you, you could cancel the appointment, you can reschedule the appointment all you want. But if you came in the door, like part of you wants to be there.
Yeah.
And then to have like not have someone be like, hey, you know, but you've got 20 other patients to see.
Check. That's my time. Thank you.
Yeah. But I mean, if I could do it all, of course I would, but I can't. So that was like kind of making those choices and that choice that, man, I do want to be in an outpatient setting and then see what blooms from there.
Can you, is it doable for you to even open up your own clinic when it comes time? Say you pursue
kind of have.
Okay.
So I started Eat Right Guam is my private practice. It's starting off very slowly, kind of a part-time gig. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm at Mariana's Physicians Group. So I work, that's kind of like my primary role.
Okay.
Working with pregnant moms mostly and families, because now they have like family practice physicians and stuff, so they can refer patients to me. I started Eat Right Guam with the help of Ryan Rupley from Fit For You Guam.
Okay.
Because business is definitely not under my skill set, but a little bit of advice can go a long way. So I'm slowly putting things together in that respect, and I have the flexibility to do what I want. And if I can't do it, I have the flexibility to say, give me time and I'll figure out how to make it happen. So that's going to take a while, I know. I
mean, even though it's slowed, are you still able to see the potential in the opportunity to expand and people being more nutrition conscious? I want to say health conscious, but
yeah, be more mindful.
Right?
Yes, definitely. I mean, that's the vision, right? Is to have that dietitian private practice that can run different specialties, whether it's...
Is that common though? Like in, say, the U.S. mainland?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Private practice dietitians there's so many. And so for me, part of it was really just tapping into those resources. You don't know how many private practice dietitians I've become friends with on social media, or I message them. I've done webinars on top of webinars on top of webinars to just learn. I don't need to recreate the wheel. It's already being done. Right. I just have to make it happen on the island. And we have certain limitations or just differences. You know, think like different insurance, malpractice insurance, and then just the acceptance, the social acceptance that
which seems like the biggest hurdle.
Yes, it is, to see it as another provider specialist. People don't like to be told what to eat. So if they have to pay to be told what to eat, that's what they think, right? Like, I'm paying someone to tell me what to eat, but really it's that counseling and getting through, what is your skill set?
Yeah.
What do you want? Where can we go from here? And that takes time.
Yeah, I agree. I just had Dara Garcia on the podcast, and she's a grief recovery specialist, and she said she was getting some backfire from, like the mental health hospital or the mental health group, that, they're not real people to give advice, or even people just like, oh, I have to pay for this. Like, it's like, yeah, if you want to, if you need someone to get you through this, this is what I'm here for. And I can see any kind of specialist going through the same cultural hurdle. Is like, why do I have to pay for this? How come it's not free? I thought we're family.
Yeah.
I thought we're friends.
Yeah.
You don't want to give me discount? Is there local discount?
Yeah. Right. So it's, and everyone's like, this covered by insurance? Does my insurance cover this? And I'm like, man, can you ask your insurance if they can cover it? Because I don't think I have the right name to ask for this.
Right.
So like those battles, I know it's going to be a lengthy process, which is why I took the advice of my dear friend Ryan and started it now. Like, if it's going to take a process, and I've had those conversations already with the different insurance companies. If they throw me hurdles and whatnot, I'm like, throw it at me one at a time, a group at a time, because I'm here to get through it. And if it takes me 5 years to get through it, then I'm starting it now, as opposed to 5 years later.
Planting the seed now. Yeah.
But doctors are waiting. They want to refer. They're looking to refer, because it kind of takes that part off of their shoulders.
So there isn't there in the health community. I mean, it's not something that you see kick back. It's more general society, or just the general population is more of the hurdle.
Yeah, or just seeing it as something that they want to invest in, and investing in yourself. So self-care, investing in yourself is a kind of a more modern concept. It's just like we're teaching people to put themselves first or take care of themselves. Like moms, super moms are always putting themselves last. But we're learning more and more now that in order to take care of people, like, we do have to take care of ourselves. And then, essentially we're becoming that, we're role modeling that at the same time, that if I don't take care of myself, then my kids are going to think that when it's their turn, they're just not going to take care of themselves either. So we can't perpetuate that mindset. We kind of got to reconfigure it, and it's going to take time, and it might not even happen, this idea of more mindfulness and self-care. It might not even happen during my career or whatever, but it's the career that I chose and that I'm super passionate about. So whatever impact I can have on our island community, like, that's...
And you can possibly be, an engine and you don't even know it, right? And you're just building the engine.
Yep. So even if it's just me, like, inspiring kids to become dietitians to continue that work,
right.
That's all that's going to be a legacy, It's like, this is how far I've gone. Now you take it and you take it another 5 steps further.
Is that what you're seeing with you being at the university?
That's what I'm hoping to build, because...
Is it a new program there?
It is.
Okay.
It is. So
like brand new?
Yeah, like with just this year.
Oh, shit. That new.
Yeah, that new.
Okay.
So, I'm an adjunct faculty there. I just teach one course a semester, but up until this past year, you could only minor in nutrition. So you couldn't become a dietitian on the island, which is why I had to go off island. Tanisha had to go off island. Our other local dietitians, they all had to go off island if they didn't move to Guam as a dietitian, like whether they're coming in from the mainland.
Could you get experience? You mentioned you had to get X amount of hours, to fulfill something. Is it available here? Or you even had to spend your time off island?
You can't do all of it on island. So the dietetic internship's like the bottleneck to become a dietitian, because you can get into a degree program, whether it's, here or there or online or whatever. But before you can sit for the exam, you need to do like a pretty intense internship. I tell people it's kind of like the residencies that, physicians have to go through, but just on a little dietitian scale, like 1,200 supervised practice hours. Majority of it's in a clinical setting, so in a hospital.
Yeah.
and you're doing all the different areas of clinical, and then you do some community nutrition hours, like 200 community nutrition hours, like think public health and anything else out in the community. Or you could even do like supermarket dietitian like Rosetta is. That's community nutrition too.
Okay.
And then another leg in food service management. So like literally any place that there's food, a dietitian can find a position, create a position. So food service management, anywhere where they're serving like, school meals, hospital meals. You could even probably do like hotels and
prison
stuff.
meals.
Yeah. If they have someone that can be a preceptor. So I had to do my clinical in Hawaii at Queen's Hospital, and then I was able to finish up the second half here on Guam because there's a Sodexo food service for school lunch.
Okay.
So they had the program and they were able to facilitate or precept, my hours. But I liked that even if students were to get their degree here, that they go off island at least for that clinical part to kind of get that full exposure of like a bigger hospital with specialty units and where there's more than one dietitian to be able to kind of guide you.
But do you want to get out of the Pacific region if you're trying to come back?
That's up to the person. So I mean, that's part of the reason why I loved that I did mine in Hawaii and why I liked that I did my master's in Hawaii was that their issues overlap, I mean, their culture, their population.
You didn't stray away so far.
No.
Yeah.
No, not at all. But I did get a bigger facility and more dietitians to learn from. So that was cool. You have like specialty units, you go up to neuro, and then you have cardio, and then you have GI, and then you have oncology, cancer, and then ICU. So that's, you gain a lot from that.
Yeah. How much have you seen nutrition attribute to disease? I mean, is there any records or data on that?
Oh, there's tons. I mean, billions. I couldn't possibly spit any numbers to you right now, but we basically can list a number of nutrition-related diseases, nutrition-related conditions. That includes diabetes, renal, cardio, hypertension,
all the top diseases here on Guam.
Yeah, anything that's non-communicable. So non-communicable diseases are all nutrition related. Nutrition does play a part, whether it's in preventing and increasing risk or even treating. So yeah, definitely, they're all relevant.
I would imagine the dietitian nutritionist community would be a direct opponent of the pharmaceutical industry, and because it's maybe something that you would as professionals wouldn't recommend first, right? When they enter your office, like, oh, well, you should go on take these cholesterol pills.
Usually I just wait. It never really is it's not a competition because it's not my scope.
Okay.
It's not my role.
Okay.
And that's something definitely is important for any professional, is to know their scope of practice and then be able to comfortably say when it's not within your scope. If I don't know enough about something, if I don't have enough experience, even if it's in nutrition, if it's a specialty, I could be like, I'm not as familiar, and I can look things up from credible sources and give you a great place to start. And if that doesn't help, maybe see someone who does specialize in a specific disease or a specific area of nutrition. It could be eating disorders, it could be sports, it could be cancer related or something. And then definitely if it's like medication, I'll be like, go back to your physician, go back to your physician or your provider specialist, because that would be on them.
Okay. I see.
Then between providers, our goals are the same though, to improve the person in terms of like their lab value. So that's maybe some place that we find common ground as different providers. And you have to learn how to work with your team. You don't want to step on toes. You don't want to overstep.
Right. You don't want to make other people feel like your advice takes precedent. Right?
Definitely, that does. And somewhere in my internship, they convey that very well. Like you learn really fast in that hospital setting how the roles flow. And you read everybody's charts. They read your charts. If they don't read your chart and they're asking questions, then it's like, that's on you. Like, did you read the notes? Same thing. If it's me, if I didn't read the note from a specialist versus the primary versus the surgeon, and then my advice is conflicting, that's on me. I'm not doing my job to have the clear picture. Then, sometimes let's say ICU doctors, and they got a lot going on. You have to have a seat at the table if you want to be respected, So it's like, if you want a part in the conversation of how to treat a patient, you should be there. You should be there on rounds. You should call them up. Hey, did you read my note? You did it? Check it out. I got some advice. I think this is recommended. Or you can even ask, like, what, why'd you do this? Could we try this? Or what were you thinking? And, you practice those kind of softer tones so you're not overstepping. But sometimes doctors don't realize that you have advice. They're like, oh my gosh, this makes my job easier. Yeah. Or I consulted you. Did you do anything? Like, yeah, my note, I put the note in like 2 minutes ago. Can you check now? So that's the teamwork that I appreciate. And I've seen, when I first started working in hospitals, not even as a dietitian, as a diet tech, I could see where there's kind of a disconnect. Dietitians weren't like the part of the starting five, on the clinical team. It's kind of a little bit more recent.
Yeah, sixth man of the year award.
Literally, like, dietitian who? I already ordered a diet, a diabetic diet. Like, who called you? And so there's kind of like, I could see dietitians who they feel like sometimes their work doesn't get noticed. Yeah. But man, just like jujitsu, like I said, I parallel it. If you want to be taken seriously, take a seat at the table, have your presence known, and do your time. Be there when that teaching opportunity, right, or that teachable moment, right, when the question pops up and no one's got the answer. Be like, I know what tube feeding to give them, and I know the rate, and I know what you should start at. I know what they should. There you go. Here you go.
Right.
If you don't take that opportunity, then
creating value.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. How has social media helped, at least with you in growing your business? Do you use a lot of it to help push or propel your mission?
Not nearly as much as I should.
It's definitely something you should get into.
I'm working on it, and on that note, the biggest step I've done was to create some real estate, which was the advice I got, which is to create a website.
Okay.
So when it was,
you have a really nice website, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like it. It's very well thought out. You really explain, because it's you, right? It's a reflection of yourself. What I saw from it is it really explains why you're explaining everything you're explaining.
Thank you. Man, you know what? Honestly, that means so much to me, because I'm not in business and marketing, and I've got friends who will ask, like, or they like to ask me, like, hey, did you make a website yet? Or hey, did you make an Instagram?
It's very personal to you. You've made it, right?
I did. So then they ask, like, hey, who made your website? And I'm like, I did. Tutorial.
Yeah.
I just read instructions.
Yeah, University of YouTube.
Or even the website generators, like they have like advice. You just click and follow.
Right. And it gives you a blank page, or you build it off a template and stuff like that. Yeah.
And a little bit of advice, like I said, goes a long way. If I'm a white belt in marketing, I gotta like take a little that I know, which is, less is more, for one, and to really make my personality come through, right? Like, your website has to be a reflection. If that's like my ambassador, right? If no one gets to see me, they're gonna see my website before they see me.
For sure. And if the website sucks, it'd be like, let's check someone else.
Yeah, right? Like unprofessional kind of thing. So probably one of the biggest moves I made was to have someone design my logo. So Jess Merrill was super, super, super awesome, and getting all of my personality. Like, they try to figure you out and figure out what you want, and like most of the questions I can't answer, and they're like, well, how if you were to pick one fruit or vegetable, like which one, like variety, like I can't. If you were to like one thing, I'm like, I can't, like, so we're not getting anywhere.
Yeah. Trust me, I'm going through a rebrand, and poor guy, I love you, John. Thank you for dealing with me. Because he was like, so what does your podcast mean for you? I'm like,
who is your target audience? Everybody. What age group? Alive. Because we don't don't know, right? Like, we don't know what area of my private practice might actually take. Is it, I love sports nutrition because I've been an athlete all my life. You know, I love clinical because it's the fun math, like tricky stuff. You know, I love community. I love just the general public and the families because that touches on role modeling and family and childhood obesity prevention. I'm like, and I don't know. And then I like the real sciencey stuff. So I'm like, I don't know. So it was beautiful. She kind of had this, of course they have like the steps, right? They have like all these different ideas. Then we narrow it. Then we talk more and then we narrow it. When we were going to get to color, I was like, oh my God. I was like dreading the part where we have to make the decisions. I was like, I need more input. And then I kind of committed to not ask anybody's input.
That was my big mistake.
Was to ask everybody's.
I was like, so what do you think of this? And they're like, oh, this, like, I was like, oh, that's not the fucking response I was looking for. Because guess what? That was my idea.
Like, what does that mean? But what does this mean? Like, you want it to look like this. And I was like, no, this is gonna be between the professional that I'm seeking.
God, I should have talked to you before. To at least get your advice.
Well,
at least on the logo side, you know, on the person getting it side, it's like, yeah, don't consult. If you're doing a rebrand or a brand, don't consult with anybody.
Just your professional and you.
Right.
I was like, if I want to be treated like a professional, I want them to trust what I have to say. I mean, they can talk to other people, but if you're gonna invest, right? If you're gonna invest your time and your resources in it, then I'd want them to take my advice. So I was like, I'm trusting you or her, and just between me and her. So I was like, you're the professional. It's my logo. Yeah. Therefore, that's only people that need to be known. Yeah. When it's done, I'll ask for the, it's kind of like my baby's name. I didn't want to tell anybody because I didn't want the input. It's just like, when she's born, that's her name. It's beautiful, right? Because she's alive. Right. Not gonna comment when she's born. Before she's born, they'll be like,
you're a smart woman, Nora. I should have asked you for this advice long time.
I only needed my husband's input. As long as he and I were good with it, then we're like, yeah, it's good. We won't tell anyone.
Yeah, we finally came up with something, and the first person I went to was my girlfriend. I was like, okay, what do you think? She's like, better. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
My husband, I asked him, I was like, what kind of name do you want? And he was just like, I just want to be able to spell it. But that's because my stepson's name is Hawaiian. Okay. And it's like 29 letters long.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
It's literally longer than the alphabet.
In true Hawaiian fashion, right?
Yes. I mean, so I say that confidently because when we first started dating and I had met his son, beautiful, beautiful boy, and his name's Ke'ea, and then I was like, or he told me like that's his nickname, or it's kind of short for his full name. I'm like, well, what's his full name? And he's like, I don't know it. And I grilled him. Like, I made him feel so bad, like, how do you not know your son's name?
This is the route I chose a long time ago.
He's like, so what happened was I didn't get to choose his name, it was kind of chosen, or, whatever. And so I was like, get your son's name, and then when he showed it to me, I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was like, maybe we'll write on a wall. Somehow I'll memorize it. And then of course he didn't. So I ended up asking his baby mama later on, like, man, can you send me his name again? Like, even for myself, like, I have to learn. Don't ask me. Right? I have it on my phone. Right. I still haven't learned it by heart. Because it's 20. I'm not Hawaiian, but I respect it. So. Right. So then when my husband is like, "What kind of name do you want?" I just want to be able to spell it. All right, we can work with that.
Short, sweet.
I was like, AIRE. Got it? Yeah. Good, great.
Let's make it to the point. Where were we at?
Here, there.
My goodness.
Logos, website, business.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, social media, right? Yes. How you're applying now social media. Like, I feel like you can do YouTube tutorials and, short, and those, and like you said, you got to pick and choose the things that it's going to consume your time, right?
Exactly.
But I feel like in this day and age, putting yourself on the internet to brand yourself is one of the most important things. If you can use your website to take people to your Instagram, that'll link your video on YouTube to them, right? It kind of like it's a it keeps them all connected, but it keeps them attracted to what you're doing.
Yes, it's definitely on my things to do list.
The long list.
On the growing curve. On the learning curve of, doing the YouTube, and that puts me a little bit out of my comfort zone.
For sure.
'Cause I've always prided myself as kind of like a in-person kind of thing. Like even when I first started doing like applications and jobs and stuff, I'm like, just get me in the door and I'll somehow walk out with a good impression. But you have to look good on paper first, right? So I had to get a little bit better at looking good on paper. I look good on paper. Now I'm learning about social media and all this. But I remember when it was between, putting more effort into the social media account versus the website. My friend Tom from Trench Challenge was like, Instagram could go away tomorrow, but your website's going to be your real estate. So if you at least get that done.
Yeah, Instagram went down for like 8 hours and people were like, oh my God.
You know that was on Register Dietitian Day?
Really?
Yeah, it was, what was it, like March 8 or something? Mm-hmm. So one of the dietitians in the mainland that really pushes like dietitians everywhere, just like people need to trust dietitians more than anybody. He says like dietitians broke the internet, like Ralph broke the internet, because it was RD Day and he had made like this giant campaign, and he's really great at social media. Like he's got all of it going on. And he created this campaign to get all the dietitians to post stuff on Register Dietitian Day. He told us the hashtags, he told us everything to put. And so when that day came and we literally, like I pushed stuff out, I had stuff out on my page, on the MPG page and stuff, and then the internet went down, but it was mainland day, so I was able to put everything on Guam time. And then on that March 8th mainland time is when the internet went down, and I didn't realize it, right? And then of course you're like, oh, everything was down. I was like, oh, I thought it was just my account. And then later he came back like, dietitians broke the internet. And I was like, sure, that sounds really good. But yeah, learning from, I love to not recreate the wheel. So if there's things that it's already being done and it's just a matter of using local foods or being in our environment. Yeah,
or even attaching yourself to maybe even local programs like PBS, right? Just to get the word any way you can get the word, right? I mean, in this day and age, they say hacking attention, right? You really, I mean, if you want your either brand or name to get out there, you really need to hack people's attention. The way you put yourself in part of the starting five is like, oh, okay, I got something to say. I read some of your notes, and this is what you need to do. But now in a social media sense, it's like whether it's a sponsored post or it's you're posting 20 times a day. Me, I'm talking like I do it. No, I have the hardest time also.
But you know about it. Now you know, now you're going to practice it. Me, I'm learning. But timing, it's going to be timing, so I'd love to get all the insurance companies on board before. I'm trying to just line things up. I'm planting seeds in different areas, which means, doing free seminars here and there, slowly getting the word out. But I'm pretty confident that things are going to happen in their time and place for the business. But I can't sleep on it. Right. God helps those who help themselves. Right. So I'll take this to heart and, map it out with a list that I've got going on.
Even do a podcast for real.
To do a podcast?
Yeah, I mean, that it all goes in line, right? I feel like you've given a wealth of information just in the last... How long we've been going here, Matt? See, and this is how it comes.
No, they're not an hour and 45.
Okay. Right on the dot, right?
Even talk about jiu-jitsu.
Not even yet. Yeah, and see, I mean, look at the. You shed so much on me. I'm like even more curious, and as we've been going along, right? And like you said, we didn't even talk about jiu-jitsu yet, and it's I feel like we live in a cool time, like a really, really, really cool time.
I agree.
Just the fact that we're able to now, if this was 15 years ago, even 10 years ago,
we didn't have a podcast.
People weren't even thinking about doing this kind of stuff and actually like believing in it, or thinking it can be real.
That's true.
Right. Or you have to go into a facility or be in a clinic, right? To actually make something of yourself. I think a lot of us here on Guam are starting to realize, especially people who I've had on the show, everyone's starting to realize, like, shit, just put a little bit more elbow grease.
Yeah.
You know, it can get somewhere.
That's true. And even, I think, because I moved home, I wasn't working right away. I was interning, which is literally free labor, and pregnant. I kind of stayed pretty low key in terms of like networking. You know, I wasn't going out. Usually you come home, the first thing you do is you're going out,
Right.
you know, reconnecting with everybody and figuring out what's going on and the issues, and, you know, and reestablishing your network. And I didn't do that. I laid low. I mean, you just find me at my intern site or at the gym.
Yeah.
And only now that I've been working for a couple years am I starting to network with, man, our generation has got so much going on. And just now the conversations are starting, you know, of like, hey, you want to get involved with this? Hey, you want to participate in that? And I'm absolutely awe-inspired by it. I mean, look, the podcast, you know, and these little things is something that I think it's something that didn't happen right away. So I'm still kind of new in that respect. Like, people even just knowing who's Lenora, like, and then of course I changed my name, my married name, like, who's Lenora Makela? Yeah. They're like, oh, Nora Matanani is Lenora Makela.
Yeah. Is that the one from the cartoon and the movies? Yeah. Right?
No, they're like
Tsunami McKenna.
Nora Jones.
Yeah.
And then even in jiu-jitsu, right? People in high school, they knew me as a basketball player, a volleyball player. They're like, wait, what's she doing now?
Right.
So I guess I've rebranded myself,
right,
so to speak, and just starting to create networks, professional networks that will be able to do. I think collaborations is something that our generation has as a strength. We're not afraid to collaborate, and that because we're a small population with intertwining resources, like that's the best way we're going to be able to get things done. It's like my strengths and your strengths, flavors. And then there'll be times where we have to be like, okay, no, just I'll make the decision. You know, like how many chiefs can calling shots? Like no one to kind of take the back seat, but we'll see. Right. So so much to look forward to.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like the field's wide open for you to actually like really, really grow quickly.
I hope so. I hope I can keep up and learn the business stuff relatively quickly.
Yeah, when I started getting into the business stuff for the podcast, it was intimidating. You know, I mean, there's no industry here or anywhere within 500 miles. Right? So I'm like, just make it up as you go.
Can I YouTube tutorial?
Yeah.
Is there a webinar for this?
I mean, good thing I have my day job, right? And so thank God for my day job for me to be able to do this as a hobby and consistently do it as a hobby. But eventually I would love to phase into like doing this full time where me and Matt see each other 8 hours a day because we just had 3 conversations. I know Matt would absolutely love that. Wouldn't you, Maddie?
I feel the same way, you know. I mean, that's the same way with Eat Right Guam. It's a part-time gig. It's I have my other jobs to pay the bills, but we'll see where it grows. Man, I've listened to some podcasts to learn about business consulting. Like I said, just not recreating the wheel, like taking the knowledge of others and then applying it to what we've got going on here locally. And we know our home, we know our landscape, and the things that I don't know about our community, I'm asking. You know, I humbly always ask for to learn in different respects. And I guess that's the uncomfortable part, you know, is as a dietitian, I take pride that I've invested in my education, in my experiences.
In yourself.
Yeah.
Wow.
Literally. So then when it comes to business, like sometimes I'm like, man, you know, I don't want people to think that she thinks she's a businesswoman. She can do this, you know? And I'm like, but that's that mindset.
Listen to the Ray Chargaloff podcast I did with him. That guy was a fitness guy who inserted himself into the food industry. And there's people that said, what is he doing here? You know, you don't belong here. But look at him now.
Yeah.
Right? And he was able to turn it into something. And I think it's more us doubting ourselves.
That's that mindset.
Yeah, right.
You always gotta shift that.
The being humble that we've grown up with here on Guam has been a blessing and a curse. Right? In that we doubt ourselves when it comes to pushing ourselves forward. It's like, hey, I don't want them to seem like wow, they're so full of themselves, you know.
If I'm too mamalo, I'm not gonna get anywhere.
Right. And that's something me, even myself, I'm still trying to learn, right? Just either as an engineer or as a podcaster, right? It's so weird to call myself a podcaster, but yeah, me as a podcaster. And I think eventually that whole humble mindset, we'd be able to find, tying back our earlier conversation, the balance.
Yeah. And just trying, you know, we won't know until we try. So as long as we're trying, that's how we're going to find out.
Right.
If we don't try, then I can't do the ifs and the buts and the maybes kind of thing.
Let's shift gears. You brought up jiu-jitsu a bunch of times, and we literally went a whole hour and 45 minutes without talking about it. and it's your promotion to black belt was my first promotion that I got to experience, like someone, you know, being promoted to black belt or any other belt for that matter.
Really?
Yeah, with jiu-jitsu, you know, me being consistent with it within the last 3 to 4, maybe 5 months, experiencing that and watching you yourself and Chris
Cry.
the emotions, right. The emotions that came out of that event or moment, I should say.
Yeah, it's a big one.
was very inspiring, you know, and to hear your story and to where it all started for you, it was even more inspiring, right? And I think, let me not try to explain your story. You know, where did it all start, you know, for you? Because from what I understand, it was when you started, no other female was even thinking about trying to do it here on Guam, especially during that time. It was super raw, right? It was a man's world, pretty much.
It was. And in the gym I started at, it was kind of like the boys, you know, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Without putting any names on it. But
Right.
so I started my senior year in high school, and I literally never heard of jiu-jitsu before. I never knew what it was. But my last volleyball tournament, my last Far East, we had a Cinderella season. So we were at Far East, and our coach we were super tight with. So Far East, of course, you're staying, you know, it's like that off-island tournament. You're just with your teammates. It's like the highlight of every year, 10 days away from your parents. You're just with your friends all day long. But we were tight with our coach. And so we would like mess around with we'd play or whatever. We'd have like, there was like days where we just like attack him or something. I forgot what we were doing, but it was something with our team. And then my teammate, Danielle, she like started doing something to my coach. Like she knew what she was doing, like putting him in a hold or something. And I'm like, how do you know what the hell you're doing? And in our hotel, she's like, it's jiu-jitsu. And I'm like, what's that? You know? So she started like shrimping in our hotel room. She's like, you do this, you do that. So she had started with her dad and her brother at Carlson Gracie, which is still run by Gabe. And I was like, what is, like, I was just intrigued. Like, what are you doing? So after the tournament, she knew I was like kind of curious. She's like, hey, my dad's asking if you want to train with us, and he'll line it up or whatever. And I was like, shoot, I'm down, you know, like our season's over. So I asked my parents, like, Mom, can I go with Uncle Danny or whatever? We're going to go train jiu-jitsu. And she didn't know, whatever. It was at Gold's Gym at the time. So the first class, I mean, I had played every sport with Danielle since like 7th grade. You know, she was my partner in crime, Freddie and George. And I think the first day in jiu-jitsu, we were in the closed guard or whatever. And I swear I was like, I must have known you for like 7 years already. And this is by far the closest we've ever been to each other, like in the bubble of our space, right? Like,
I'm in your legs.
Yeah, like literally, like, I mean, we've roomed together, we've traveled together, we've won championships together. And this is like new, different, right? And but it was cool. It was interesting. So funny. And then it got to a point where they were sparring, so I didn't know what to do. And so Gabe was like, well, let's just show you the positions. So he's like, this is a guard, this is side control. And then we got to mount, and Danielle went to roll. So it was one of the boys that was helping me. And at the time that I mounted somebody, my mom came into the gym and checked to see what was going on. And she literally just saw me sprawled out on top of a dude. And she was like, nope. She pulled me out.
Wow.
She didn't let me train. And I was pissed off. Was
it a love at first sight for you?
A little bit. I was just so intrigued. I wasn't yet bit by the bug, but I was super intrigued, right? And I mean, volleyball and basketball were over. My seasons were over. I didn't do soccer and rugby because of I was post knee surgery. So my parents were like, we're not paying for any more surgeries before you graduate. And so then I couldn't. I was pretty mad. What the hell? He went out of his way to make this happen, and it's cool, and you're saying no. Like, ugh. So then she found this self-defense kickboxing class at Contenda's. She's like, here, you want to do something? Here's a women's self-defense class. And I was like, shoot, I got nothing to do. Like, you work out at a gym? Sure. Right. So I did the it was Contenda's and Brant McCready's kickboxing class for women. And it was like military wives and like working moms. And here I was, this like senior academy. I'd come in like basketball shorts, like the baggy basketball shorts and like t-shirt, the 5K shirt. That's your practice, right? You got your whatever year you're playing, the shorts, and then a 5K shirt. Right. So I'd be doing the kickboxing classes, and then next to that was the mats and then the ring. So at that time there was a bunch of UX fighters that were training for a fight, and it was Elijah Regis's. He was training for his first fight, his Prebaha fight. And so part of the class, they'd have the fighters come to us and just let us literally punch the shit out of them, like hands on their faces, and they're like, go.
Like, punch my body as hard as you can.
Literally, like, punch me as hard as you can. And so, so maybe some ladies are like, yeah, I mean, it's good for self-defense, right? If you don't know what that impact feels like, your body's not used to actually following through. So, but for me, I was like, I remember I looked at Chris Bubb's face, and he was like, go for it. And I was like, all right. And on one of those drills, I like cracked his nose. And so it was like kind of a running joke, like, what happened to you? And they're like, that little girl over there, whatever. So anyway, throughout those classes, I kind of get interested. I'm looking at the mats, like, man, they're rolling, like that looks so fun. When does this kickboxing class end or whatever? And so at one point I asked Brant, like, man, can I train over there? And like, my dad drops me this time. Or throughout that course of the kickboxing class, I got my license. So I went from getting dropped and picked up to like, I'm driving there or whatever. And then I was like, can I roll? And he's like, maybe not. He's looking over there like, nah. And I went to his wife, Dee, at the table on another day. And I was like, man, you think I can join this class? And she's like, saying the same thing, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm not getting anywhere with this. Like, you guys aren't helping me. And then Big John Calvo, and I always tell this story. Big John Calvo was like, Nora, you should roll with us. And I'm like, I don't think if I should. People are telling me maybe I shouldn't. And he's like, no, I'll look out for you. He's like, I'll pick your partners. Yeah. Just wear extra clothes. I was like, because it was still Nogi at the time, and it was
just layer up.
Yeah, literally. So it'd be like Under Armour and the t-shirt and then spandex under the basketball shorts kind of thing, right? And so he'd pick my partners, whether it was like the younger boys, like Kyle Boom Regis. Okay. Elijah Regis was kind of one of the lighter weights of the guys. Okay. And so I would just sneak it in there, I'd go to kickboxing and then I turn it into jiu-jitsu before I go home. And then I would borrow my friend Danielle, my original friend's gi. I'd be like, can I borrow your gi? And she wasn't using it. She's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then by that summertime, and so of course my mom, she didn't want me to do it in the first place. So of course she wasn't going to give me a grace to do it at another gym. Right. But at that point I was already kind of, driving on my own, being a little bit independent, or making my own mistakes, kind of thing. So sure. I made choices to figure out how I could train, even if it was once a week or something. And I remembered I would even like, this is gonna sound gross, but I would, at the end of the night, I'd leave my gi in the car so that when I go in the house, it doesn't show. And then in the morning before the sun's fully up, I like get out of my house, like wash it and hang it up. And my dad would see it in the house like, or like in my room, like, I'm not gonna talk about this right now. Like,
what are you exactly using that for?
And then he kind of figured it out, because he would my dad's no shame. I'm super tight with my dad, and he'd show up and he'd see what's going on, and I'd be like, yeah, I want to try it out. And he'd be like, well, your mom doesn't want you to do it, so can you maybe wait till you're in college, or, like, let's not.
When you're not around us?
Yeah.
All right.
But he wasn't opposed to it, because he did Aikido, and I think that one generation, everybody did Aikido, or there was another one. There was 2 martial arts that everybody did. So he's like not opposed to it.
Huh? Hapkido and Aikido?
Yeah. And so he was for it. He's like, yeah, do it, but maybe, when you're out there. So I would kind of keep it low key, but that was kind of the start of me getting on the mats. And
what kept you going?
Man, I got bit by the bug.
Okay. Even when you're out there, that was the first thing you did, or?
Man, so I was super in love with jiu-jitsu, and that summer, I was going off island for the Junior Olympic volleyball tournament in Minnesota. So I was playing for a club team, traveling for volleyball, and I'd be kind of talking about it, like, dude, jiu-jitsu this and jiu-jitsu that, like, hey, we can shrimp here, roll here, and all my teammates are like, whatever, like, they don't understand. Yeah. Then I'd come back and I'd find different people to roll with, kind of just like interested, and anyone who was willing to roll with me, I'd kind of just be like, yeah, I'm down to learn. I'm down to, whether it's in your basement, your backyard, or on the mat, like, I'm quite. So that summer is when Louis Regis moved back, and Jay Cruz moved back. Okay. So Jay Cruz, rest in peace.
For sure.
Is a good friend of mine.
Really good friend of mine too. Yeah.
And mostly because of jiu-jitsu. So Jay.
Okay. Yeah, he used to pick me up and drop me home from school, and football practice and stuff like that. Yeah, we were tight.
He used to pick me up to go to Hard Rock.
Yeah, one time. ... Yeah, to project Jay's memory. He picked me up at like 3 a.m. one time because I didn't have a ride home. That's right. And I was doing something crazy as a junior in high school. Oh yeah. Or sophomore. I think I was a sophomore in high school. So he took care of me a lot while we were in high school.
Yep. Same Jay. So he set me on the mat, and he was he was so stoked for me on the mat. He would teach. He told me who Kara Gracie was. He'd be like, this is a female black belt. You could be just like her. He gave me 2 of his gis. Louis is probably tired of this story already, but my first 2 gis were straight off of Jay. He gave me his white belt because he had a blue belt already. And he's like, here, train the gi, train this. And so I was getting ready to move to Hawaii. But he was down to teach me to roll with me. You'd be like, pace yourself, like you're not doing a sprint. And so I formed a fast bond with him for jiu-jitsu. Okay. So even when I was in Hawaii, like I remember he visited once or twice. He'd stay with like Keiko or something. And he'd ask me like, hey, are you training and this and that? And it took me, I actually moved to Hawaii and played Division II basketball my freshman year. Okay.
So you were able to bring sports beyond high school. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Man, my 8th grade year, when they do the superlatives, my team voted most likely to make it to the NCAA, and they voted me, and I was like, that's such a dream. It's never going to happen. Right. And then I walked on a Division II team at Chaminade. And that was super cool. And I was like, dang, it came true. Like even I didn't get much playing time. I was a freshman. Okay. And they had scouted out their starting 5 and whatever. So part of the reason why I didn't continue with that team, it wasn't a great fit at the time. But that first semester I dedicated to my basketball career. That was really intense. Like you just eat, live, breathe basketball, and then go to class and more basketball. And so when the season was over, some Guam boys like Carlos Estacio. Okay. And so they were like, he was more
fellow Jotnya brethren.
Yes. Well, Teleforo, that's right. Right. And basically anybody of us that was out there that had done jiu-jitsu on Guam, I was like, dude, who cares what team we train for? Because we didn't train for the same team, but we're out here in Hawaii, we're in Guam, like let's all train together. So there was a couple of us, a handful of us. I remember one day he walked in, he's like, Nora, I found a team, let's go train. And I was like, shoots. And so we did. There was like 4 of us from Guam, and we found a House and Gracie Team HK, which was like right down the street from UH. And so we all started training there together. And there were, even at that school, I was the only girl. So there would be some times where they'd be doing drills, and they say partner up, and of course you look to your normal partner.
Yeah.
And so the two odd people without a partner would be me and Carlos.
Okay.
Me and Luck.
Right.
And he'd be like, you look at each other like, it's partner, and we're like, yeah, sprawling on each other. That's love and trust right there. But
for
that
him
was
not to smash the shit out of you.
literally squash me like a bug. But that was me having a seat at the table. This is what I want to do. I gotta be all in, if it's,
Sure.
I gotta keep up. And so, there was respect. So he's not literally trying to squash me.
Yeah.
We're both trying to learn. So I did my first tournament with him and Gil. Oh, forgetting his last name at the moment right now. But the day of my first tournament, I called up Jay because he kept telling me like, compete. Man, Jay would give me BJJ DVDs. He's like, watch this. Like, he's just like feeding me jujitsu, right? And I was just like, I don't know, I'm kind of serious. Like, just do it. You'll be so proud of me. So he kind of coached me through it. And when I called him up, I was like, Jay, I did my first tournament. I didn't win. Well, I medaled by default, but I didn't win my match. And he was just like so stoked for me. He's like, how do you feel? I was like, you just broke the ice. There was no pressure. You don't need to prove anything. Like, how does it feel? And, you're just like, feel so alive. Like, anytime you first do your have you done it?
No, not yet.
When you do your first tournament, we'll have a conversation.
Okay.
You've got nothing to lose. You're just breaking the ice. You're just putting it out there, seeing the energy, feeling the vibe. And, I was super inspired that, I want to do this again. But he was like in my corner the whole way. He was so stoked. He's like, yeah, let's do it again, compete again and all that. So definitely grew from there. I was still only had 2 gis at the time. I literally never bought a gi for myself until I moved back to Guam in 2010, the Shoiro Golden State. One of the beauties of being the only girl and relatively small was that I didn't have much pride and I can accept hand-me-downs. So if anybody's gi shrunk too much or they gained a little bit of weight, they're like, no, you want it? Yeah. So I'd like have tap-out shorts that were below my knees, sprawl shorts. And so I remember I formed good bonds in your teams, and I had a coach in Hawaii who would joke like I'd be changing into clothes after training, and they'd be like, who's that 12-year-old boy back there? Are you gonna come eat with us? And I'm like, shut up. Some people thought I was bi or whatever just because it's the outfit, but
right.
Coming from a basketball background, I think just my personality to just not always caring about the certain image,
right.
But I got by. And
they would call you tomboyish.
Yeah.
Would they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that growing up all over.
Okay. Well, just playing sports in general.
Yeah, and kind of playing the part. And I mean, my parents are super, super old school Catholic rules, and so even if I was going to private school with all the affluent counterparts, didn't necessarily mean I could have the same. Even if I could afford it, my parents would be like, "Why?
Right?
Why?" You don't need that. Let's try. This is cool. No, it's not. This is trendy. No, too much shoulders for a sweater. So I'd be like, fine, never mind. I'm just gonna wear basketball shorts. Like if you can't rock the girly part, I'll rock the sporty part.
Right.
That's what people thought of me. And like
Spice Girls were in then, right?
Sporty Spice was a spice.
Right.
Still could be a girl. And
for sure.
But that goes so far. I try to give that same message to a lot of the young girls and teenagers that I work with, whether it's as a dietitian or as a black belt, is like, man, and especially because there's so much curiosity and openness, right, to all the different sexualities. But I'm like, just because you want to rock your hat backwards and wear a bigger pair of shirt or shorts, like it doesn't necessarily mean you fit into a stereotype. Like
right.
You can really just be whoever you want to be. And I would take pride in it too, because living on my own in Hawaii, like if I was on a bus or whatever, like you attract attention, right? So if I was on a bus rocking like basketball shorts and a hoodie, nobody's gonna bother me if they think I'm a 12-year-old boy. I'm wearing short shorts and a tube top, and people are gonna look and maybe want to follow me. So part of that was like a nice security. I mean, prerogative and all that, we can have that. That's a big conversation, but sometimes, and then it's beautiful when you flip the switch, like a time and a place. So if we are gonna go out and I gotta dress the part, like I'm gonna dress the part.
Yeah. Wow, Nora, I didn't know you dress up so nicely.
I didn't know what you looked like outside of a gi or with your hair down. And I'm like, That's right, fucker. Take a good look.
Because basketball shorts are coming back on when I get home.
Exactly. You're like, it's the same person, just a different outfit, but the power of the outfit.
For sure.
Sometimes people would have to meet me twice. Like I used to follow Mike Scrow to play pickup basketball all over Honolulu, you know. Okay. So we'd go to the cage and we'd play ball, and then we'd go out later, and I'd introduce myself twice, and they're like, "Yeah, you met me earlier, different outfit." Like, oh no shit.
Yeah.
But so I don't know how far we got there. Where did we get to this part of the
we're just talking about your sort of your evolution.
Oh yeah, the story of how I got here. Definitely a memory to Jay. So, you know, for all of those memories back then, and of course after that, kind of didn't stay as close until, you know, hearing about it much later. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget the people who the people who inspired you in the sport, and the first people that helped you. You know, so I'm sure you can remember your first days in the gym, and the people who showed you how to shrimp or kind of partnered with you. And
honestly, I feel like it's everybody.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think the thing that attracted me to the academy was just the environment. Yeah. Everybody in there willing to help. You know, even though it's like some people roll hard, but even then it's like they're still willing to help no matter what. And it's cool. It's cool to be able to. Yeah, I've known about jiu-jitsu for a long time, but it was never for me during those times. I was like into music, right? And trying to get my degree and stuff like that. And certain things mattered back then. But now where I'm in this position where I'm trying to find balance in my life or maintain that balance. And jiu-jitsu has become one of those things for me to where, I mean, Elijah says it all the time to me. It's like, come to the gym, refocus, right?
It's a beautiful thing.
Right. And, you know, I mean, you're spending so much time on this one thing, you know, you're stressed out for a reason. Come to the gym, refocus, rebalance. And I'm just like, all right, come back, get the shit beat out of myself. Be like, okay, refocus.
What a good day. But we really do forget everything.
Oh, yeah.
Happens even at this point, like, what is it, like 13 years later, still happens. Like, the hardest part is just stepping on the mat, like, because you could be, you know, taking a nap, you could be wherever. Kind of like what Dex said was like, you're like, you know, maybe I'm tired, or maybe, you know, maybe not today, but, and maybe you let some days go, but when you do get your butt in that gym, whether you're late or you're early or whatever, just getting there, as exhausted or distracted or bothered as you are, you forget everything that was on your mind.
For sure. I stopped giving Lewis and Elijah excuses, because they've heard it all, I'm sure.
And that's the role they play too, you know, is kind of just to catch you. Yeah. Hey, where have you been? And Lewis still does it to me to this day. I mean, after I had Irie, of course, there's going to be mornings I wake up and I'm like, I'm not moving anywhere. And if I skip, you know, enough, if I don't go or whatever, and he sees me, and he said, well, his and I relationship is a really, really special one, you know, and he'll just smile. Where have you been? You know, that hug, like, I generally miss you. Right. I miss you on the mat. Where have you been? How are you doing? Like, what's going on? Like, whether you're tired, you got something going on, like, do I just need to expect this from you? But of course we've grown so much. So when I first met Lewis, when he first moved home, like, he was my teacher, he was my training partner, him and Elijah was preparing for his first fight, and they respected me to have a place on that mat, you know? And so that never forgotten also has grown so much.
How special was it for you that they were the ones that promoted you to your black belt?
Oh man, I think I wouldn't have it any other way. You know, I started my journey with them. I mean, mind you, of course, I stepped into a Cross and Gracie gym first. And I have so much respect for Gabe, and I always give him that respect. But the relationship I built with Elijah and Lewis from the beginning, and the growth that we've had thus far, and, you know, we'll continue to grow as well, is so special. So, I mean, even when I got my brown belt, it wasn't from Lewis. And I remember calling Lewis and be like, man, asking him so many questions, you know, like, do you you think I'm ready? Like, what do you think about it? Like, part of me wanted to get it back home, but you're not going to deny your journey wherever it is. You're not going to deny your instructors to believe in you, or to then, you know, like he says to everybody, if you don't think you're ready, you better own up to it. But to get my black belt from Lewis and Laja was definitely really special.
Yeah. Honestly, I was like trying to hold back my emotions. I was like, ugh, just breathe. Just breathe slowly. Keep the tears in.
And you know, when they called my name, part of me was like, I could just stay right here and not even get up. Like,
don't accept it.
No, not that, but like cry to myself.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
because I was walking up like in tears, like, and they were super proud of me. I mean, we've come such a long way together. So for them to be in that moment, it's, you know, it will live with me forever. And even if I was their first, you know, female black belt, one of their first black belt promotions period, I'm so looking forward, and I know that I just definitely won't be the last. You know, there's just because the first means it's okay, the first, but there's definitely going to be more, and I look forward to that. Like I look forward to, you know, being an influential role with a lot of our females who are training with us.
Yeah, and you've started doing the female classes, yeah?
Yeah, the women. Actually, we had planned. That was already in the works before the promotion.
Yeah, when you were ready, when you were brown belt ready, right.
You know, so we're kind of like figuring out the logistics. I was like, oh my, it was gonna add something to my plate, you know, because maybe they've thrown it out.
I like
there.
how we keep tying everything back. Yeah.
And they thrown it out here and there, and of course, when I was pregnant, I was like, yeah, it's a lot. Then Irie was born, and I was like, hold on first, and then I wanted to compete. You know, and then I still help out with the kids and kind of fill in for classes when we need to. And then it came to the point like, okay, seriously, you want to do your class now? I was like, okay, fine. I got my husband's blessing, because any new class doesn't, you know, my schedule doesn't affect me only, it affects my family.
Right.
So discussing with my husband, like how can we make this work where it's not going to be, you know, more time away from our family, because he doesn't train, and most people are always surprised by that. And then our girl comes with me half the time, but not all the time. So, but then that would be a longer time. You know, how much time can you ask a toddler to be patient?
Right.
So then we were figuring it out, and they're like, okay, now we got to figure out the logistics with the gym once we have that. And then when the promotion happened, I'm like, oh, wow, well, that will change up the social media ads a little bit.
Right.
But it's exciting. It's something I've dreamt of also. And Jerica, you know, our purple belt, who's the next colored belt below me, even when I was in Hawaii, and I'd always come home on breaks and train, and we'd go shopping together, or we'd go have coffee together, and we'd talk about jiu-jitsu, and we'd be like, man, when are you gonna move home? Like, you know, I miss training partners. Like, man, we're gonna build this female team one way or another. Like, we're just be patient, just keep training. We're gonna build this female team. And so then to put it together, you know, she's my right hand woman when it comes to our female team, and we've got, you know, a bunch of others too that are growing and evolving and stepping up. So.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure you're getting different people from different facets of life that can help. Now you're creating a different kind of community within the jiu-jitsu community that can possibly even help your nutritional community, right?
Yeah,
or your
that
goals,
nice little,
right?
Yeah, and it's jiu-jitsu. It complements me as a dietitian, of course, because it definitely supports that, you know, walk the walk, don't just talk the talk kind of thing. Eat a balanced diet and also be active, and that's my choice. It's funny because growing up, I always saw myself probably being like a basketball coach, volleyball coach, and of course, I never knew what jiu-jitsu was. And then a decade later, coaching in jiu-jitsu, it's like, oh, I'm still a coach. Completely different sport, no ball.
Right. And good knees.
Yeah.
Still got my knees here.
Yep, still got my body parts. I mean, I don't know. There's parts of my jiu-jitsu career where I felt super broken.
I've been feeling broken since I started doing it consistently.
Right?
It's like, why won't this toe heal?
Oh man, I swear there was like a good section of my blue belt where my last 2 digits on both feet, I swear, were only held together by skin. Like,
Oh shoot.
because we used to have puzzle mats in Hawaii, and so my baby toes would always get caught in the mat. And so I try, you try to learn how to tape. Of course, you learn how to tape, and then it comes off, and you try to tape it, and then you resprain it all the time. It's like, are they still there? Like, how many times can you sprain your baby toe? Like, you're wiggling it, like, oh,
Right.
so sorry.
Yeah. As long as it's not dangling.
like Marv says, like, just tape it. Just,
Right.
You know how much tape? You can buy more tape. Just
Right.
taping it. And you have like seasons of injuries, but that then teaches you. Then we learn like how to find more balance, create more balance, learn more stretching, different types of exercises. We're always thinking strength. I've spent a large amount of my purple belt and brown belt career learning about like stability, those tiny little muscles that we neglect, So,
Yeah, like your morning workouts on the Saturdays.
yeah.
I've never sweated so much in my life in 10 minutes.
my Saturday morning warm up.
Yeah.
You like that?
Yeah, I do.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put a little bit of this, a little bit. It's still a warm up. You get the stretch, you get the workout, you get your heart going, and we don't waste any time.
Yeah. All I'm thinking is like, I can't wait till we get to the floor and exercise.
Thanks for telling me. I'm gonna switch it up. I'm gonna bring us
No more burpees, please.
Yeah. And I've learned there's so many types of burpees that we could do. Like learning more about.
The sprawling burpees.
Yep. Yep.
Fun. My favorite.
The push-up class.
Those are my absolute favorite. Let me just tell you that. Put it there.
Like, let's get down. Now let's get back up. This warm-up sponsored by Master Random.
This came specially from our conversation. But yeah, one thing I've learned in the gym is everybody has their own specialty. Mm-hmm. Somebody specializes in some movement, some stretch, right? Some roll, and it's attracted more and more and more. I spent the last week, I didn't go all week. Mm-hmm. I went yesterday and I felt it. And I was like, oh. I was telling Elijah, he's like, how do you feel? I was like, I feel off. I feel completely off. I was like, I wasn't moving good. I felt like I was like glued to the mat. I wasn't like usually like rolling the way I do. And he's like, no, you'll get it back. You get it back. Just keep coming.
I've had days where I literally want to walk off the mat crying. I've had days where like, whether you're frustrated, you're not on point, or maybe you feel you're at a certain level and then someone just manhandles you, like technique or not. Mm-hmm. You get manhandled or you get your neck tweaked or something, and you're just like, all the emotions just come rushing up. And but that's part of the growth. That's part of the journey, and we all have those days. So
for sure,
I'm
I'm excited for mine. I mean, I'm not in a rush for anything or any belt. I just really love what it's doing to me. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy. It's so crazy.
I'm so happy.
Yeah.
So happy that you're in this. You're in this with us.
Yeah. The bug is real.
The bug is
that
real.
shit's real, ladies and gentlemen.
And I always just ladies, of course, I can relate to, because a lot of our ladies that we train with, that whether they're blue belts or white belts or even purple belt, they've spent years on the sidelines. When they weren't ready, they didn't, whatever their reasons were, right? But I've learned to just be calm and just say, we're here for you when you're ready. Whenever you decide, you know where to find us.
Yeah.
And then when we have this conversation, it's...
Yeah, for sure. Lewis has been telling me since 2015, the alumni tournament. And, I was drunk. We were having fun. And we just started talking, him and I. He's like, just come by the gym. He's like, you know what? Don't even come to roll. Just come to watch. And it only took me, 3 or 4 years to come, but I came and he's like, you're here. Mm-hmm. That's it. You took the first step.
Yep.
So it's cool. Let me not hold you any longer. How long are we really going?
2 hours 22.
Thank you. This was tremendously wealth of knowledge, both on the jiu-jitsu side and most especially on the dietitian nutritional side. just because we spent more time talking about it, and we're definitely going to do this again. We have to.
All right.
Right. Because I feel like there's things that still need to be said and learned.
Oh yeah,
And
for sure.
I feel like the wealth of knowledge that you hold within your brain can help a lot of people who do listen to this podcast. So, as my thank you for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge, promote anything you like, your website, how people can follow you, what you do, even the women's classes and stuff like that. So, that being said, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. I keep it simple. Eat Right Guam, Figo, Bonsai, Jiu-Jitsu. If you feel like you don't know what your relationship with food is, you know, whether you put too much stress on yourself, you don't know what's what, see a professional, you know, see a dietitian, even if it's not me. But I'm here.
What's your website exactly?
EatRightGuam.com.
Okay.
Yep. So that's inspired by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. It's not like I feel like my way is the right way, but just to help people try to weave through all the different information out there, you know, to find evidence-based information and practices, and just what can they start with and believe in. So eatrightguam.com, get in touch with me. And I whether it's sports or individual or community thing, I always love having the conversation and seeing how I can contribute. And then Figo Bonsai Jiu-Jitsu for sure. Growing our women's class, growing our team in general. Our team is always evolving.
Right.
Kids, women, adults, older adults.
Right.
The journey can start anywhere, you know, so always happy to play a part with that. And man, super stoked. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm glad we finally did this.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it again. It's not going to be long. I won't wait 2 years. It's been the common case that I wait 2 years before I have somebody on. And it's like, wait, why did I wait this long?
It's all right. It's on that list, you know. I know. It's when you were there, they were like, podcast. I was like, oh yeah, definitely on my mind.
So, but maybe down the line we'll work on getting you started on a podcast. I feel like adding you to that community would be very, very beneficial.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
In the meantime, you know, Master Random's cool. But I won't knock it, definitely.
Cool.
Room for growth.
Yes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You'll hear everything in the end roll, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this episode with Lenora Makela. And as always, Maddie loves you. Tell them how much you love him, Maddie.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot. And yeah, leave a review and a rating on the podcast. You'll hear this all at the end. And if you want to hear that sweet voice that just said a lot, he's the one that's going to read it. And ratings help always. So thank you. I love you. Maddie loves you. Until next time, peace out. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to this episode of the podcast with Lenora Makela. Told you, right? Knowledge bombs. Super awesome person. Shout out to the sponsor, Addis Mortuary. They are a small family-owned and operated mortuary that has been serving this island community for over 45 years. Addis Mortuary, they are large enough to serve, yet small enough to care. Episode 200, you heard in the pre-roll. If you're interested in coming, hit me up in the DMs and we can make it happen for you to come and join us at the live show for episode 200. It's going to be epic. And don't forget to support us on Patreon and rate and review the podcast, because that's the coolest thing you can do for it. And also, thank you for being super awesome. Thank you.